Gaten Power. Gaten's not here. Adam Kobrosley.
Hello.
Cody Peripolkin. Sorry. Kayla Parker.
Good
Kayla
morning.
Parker. Okay. Riley Griffin.
Hi, I'm here.
Ben Hovinga. Ben Hovinga. Maybe one of the ones that have a mic. Okay. Jonathan Butler Harnum.
I'm here.
Okay. Nathan Judry. Dowdry. Terry McLean, I think, mentioned on the chat. Thomas McDonald. Oh, not here. Fred Wheeler.
Here.
Okay. Jordan Brodeur. I think he never joined. Clyde is not here. Brad Stewart.
Yeah, good morning.
Tina Pollard.
Good morning.
Terry McGrath.
Here.
Daniel Guerrero. Not here. Okay. So let me go back just to see who else made it. So Martin, you're not here. Miles is not here. So I've been getting emails that a couple of people are having issues joining. Okay, so first things first. The thing that must be asked is I know I talked a lot yesterday. I went on a lot of rants. Did you guys learn anything? Because I know at least one person, no value, right? I can't remember who it was. I thought I would be able to see the chat screen from yesterday and I can address whatever is on the chat. But I skimmed it yesterday, so I can't remember who it was. But at least there was no one who believes there was no value of anything that I said yesterday, which is fine. I'll address that today. So basically, there were three issues for my skimming: no value, and basically another one was, oh yeah, he hasn't gone to the slides yet. We're past day one, okay? And then I think it's something about the exam. Is this going to be in the exam, etc., etc., etc. Right? So before I address those three things in reverse order, how about the rest? Did anyone learn anything? At least one person? Yes or no?
Hi, it's Kayla here. I had a really hard time following along with what you were saying without anything to read on the screen as well.
Ah,
That was
okay.
my
So,
hard time, like keeping on top of what you were saying and following along with what you were saying with nothing to follow on the screen because it didn't match what you were saying.
yeah, I apologize for that, but that's how I. So to me, look, was I not sharing my screen throughout the whole time? Or was what I was saying had nothing to do with what I was showing on the screen? Is that the problem? Here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. So are you also the same person that said no value?
No, that wasn't me. No.
Okay, okay. So let me go now. So for example, here it is. Let me go backwards, right? So let me address today, right? I will give you the slides, the slide deck to your heart's desire. It's all gonna be on the actual slide deck, okay? That is given to you. Fine, okay. The other one about the exam, okay? The exam you'll see tomorrow. It's like I think 30 questions, multiple choice. Okay. So here, let me mimic what the person who said no value, right? To me, when you look at the exam, right? Of course, the exam has a certain value to you, right? On a personal or whatever level, because when you get perfect or you pass the exam, certain benefits are given to you, right? Like you might need that to get promoted, you might need that for whatever, like get paid more, and all the rest of it, be qualified so that you can do other things. So there is value in the sense that yeah, you gotta like pass or get really good marks on this exam tomorrow. But you'll see when you actually see this exam. Here's what I'm saying. There's little to no value to the exam if your interest is, if you actually want to solve real problems in your workplace, because you'll see the nature of the exam is basically regurgitation, right? So all the answers you'll ever need to answer most of the exam is going to be on the slide deck, right? So this is an open book. So literally you can go through the slides, you can control F it, the PowerPoint, and you'll land at the whatever answer. So all it is a whole bunch of factoids, I call it factoids, that you just regurgitate so that you can put it as an answer to a multiple choice. To me, that is no measure on how you're actually going to solve any real problems in the real world, because there's just a whole bunch of factoids that you're regurgitating based on the slide. That's literally what you're going to do tomorrow. So people pass the exam, no problem, right? So yesterday, what I'm trying to get at it's not the factoids, it's the actual mechanism or the thinking that you need to use to actually figure out what happens in a workplace. So for example, let me draw something for you. Again, this is back to the critique that I'm not, here, let me draw something, okay? Here, okay? Hopefully you see this. If you look at accident investigation, okay? Okay, that's good. Okay. There's really only what? Okay, collect data, right? This is the actual investigation. You're just collecting data, right? So it could be physical evidence, right? Physical evidence, okay? It could be documents, right? It could be taking photos and sketches, okay? Or video, you name it, okay? Sketches, right? And it could be interviewing witnesses. That's it, okay? Witnesses, okay? You're collecting data. You're collecting the data, okay? So that you can form in your mind what exactly happened, step by step by step, right? Minor, medium-sized, really bad accidents, right? Step by step what happened. So the next step then becomes event sequencing, okay? So your D&D form 663 is blind to number one. It's blind, right? You don't see a place there where you can demonstrate what the evidence is, right? They should be, but there isn't, right? So number two is the event sequence. So that is box number, basically that's box number 4, the details, okay? That's box number 4. Okay, then what you do next, once you know the event sequence, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. While this is happening, this is also happening, this is also happening, this is also happening. Next, you identify the causes, right? Identify causes, okay? Okay. Then once you identify the cause, then you propose your solutions, right? Solutions that addresses the causes that you have identified, right? So for example, here, that's why I can show you the 3 examples. I can show you many more. There are many different examples that was given from the other incarnations that I have. I can see the D&D form 663. You can see, if you read enough of it, you can see a pattern building on how people are thinking when they're writing this stuff, okay? So for here, right? So I'm gonna forget about all this other stuff, okay? Let's just focus on the description, okay? So you have this one, you can open this one, right? Again, of course, what I'm about to do here is inherently unfair. Why is it inherently unfair when I'm making a criticism of this D&D form 663? Fundamentally, it does not matter how profound or how good or what it is that I'm saying, the reasons I'm giving. What I'm about to do right now is inherently unfair. Why? And it's unfair to who? Which object? What I'm about to do right now, critique this thing. Why is it inherently unfair? I'm going to do that tomorrow too, to the full-blown report.
Because you weren't there?
Pardon me?
Because you weren't there?
Because I wasn't there, and the person who was there, who did the investigation, is not here, okay? So always keep that in mind, that when I'm doing this, it's inherently unfair to this, to this, to this, and also to the report tomorrow. I can tell you right now, the full-blown report tomorrow, performed by subject matter experts in health and safety. They're the health and safety people internal to Winnipeg, right? You'll see that the way they sequence the events in their minds, in one part of the report, what they're saying is internally inconsistent with what they're saying in another part of the report. So which one is it? Because you'll see tomorrow that what they're saying in one part of the report, right? The reasons and the causes and the possible solutions are going to be different from another part of the report, right? So that's why, to me, thinking about this thing, thinking it out, is more important, because at the end of the day, yeah, you'll pass the exam with flying colors. You'll regurgitate what's on the slides, but I mean, yeah, you'll get your qualification, all that. But in the real world, so in an administrative sense, it has value. But in the world of the universe doesn't care, right? The universe just wants you to figure out what went on and how to solve it, right? It has no predictive value. It's no measure on how you're going to attack a problem, right? So yesterday, with all my rants, showing you different anecdotal examples, I'm giving you a glimpse on how I approach any problem especially problems that are not known. When I'm looking at things I've never seen before, right? For example, here, let's look at the description. Member was working at the prep table in the kitchen located by the tilt fryers. Here's my mechanism, right? Whenever I read any sentence, I place objects in space. Member, okay, object, prep table, so there's a table, object, kitchen, he's in the kitchen, located beside whatever this tilt fryers, okay? He was using a steel, okay? So to me, I might think I know what the steel is to sharpen a knife, right? But it's just an imagination in my mind what this thing is, right? He was using a steel to hone the knife when the hand slipped and accidentally caught the knuckle on the index finger of the left hand, slicing it with the knife. So when we read that sentence, right? If you just look at it objectively as the sentence is written, do we know exactly how his hand slipped? Yes or no? Do we know? From the words itself, do we know how his hand slipped?
No.
We don't, right? So this is a problem, okay? So that's why I forget who it was that wanted to ask me yesterday, hey Alejandro, I want to be a master of the 663. So here I'm showing you the approach to the problem. You can do that by looking at all the 663s and figure out, being honest with yourself, do I actually know what happened here, right? So once you figure out, oh, when I'm reading someone else's words and I wasn't there and I don't know exactly what happened, well, guess what? When I'm writing my own words, describing what I think happened, then I cannot take anything for granted. I have to write it in such a way that the person reading this who was not there can understand exactly what happened in this minor injury or accident, right? So the member had the wound cleaned and wrapped and was transported to the hospital where 3 stitches were administered to close the wound. Like, for example, okay, so that's the sequence of events. Now let's look, okay? Here, I'm not even going to go into this, right? Here is what I'm trying to tell you. For example, if you want to be a master of the 663 from an administrative level, right? Then yeah, you're going to put down the right thing. Here, look at this, right? So what do you think is going on in that person's mind? Is this accident so complicated that he chose to put down in the accident type unknown? Is it really unknown? That this guy cut his finger, but we just don't know exactly. Is it truly unknown? So why would he put that there, right? He put in his speculation. He puts that there because he has to go through all these codes, and he can't quite fit any other code to match with the cut. So then he chooses unknown or unclassified, right? But in the real world, what is that? Like, he literally does not know what this thing is, right? So this is a problem. Okay. Here, okay. Direct cause: hand tools, non-powered chef knife, and honing steel. So he believed that's the direct cause. Yeah, true. That's what cut him, right? But here, okay. So for example, another direct cause: inattention, distraction, boredom, right? So here it's a code, okay, which is fine, right? But for example, this word, right? This word, are they identical? Is boredom fundamentally the same as distraction? Yes or no?
No.
No, okay, right. But yet they're on the same thing right here, okay? So this injury was sustained doing a task that we don't understand exactly what it is. That is a normal part of their job, okay? And can happen if the person carrying out the task is not paying attention. So here, the way it's worded, can happen. So what does the word can imply? Is it actually what happened? It's possible, right? It can happen if the person carrying out the task is not paying attention to what they are doing or is distracted even momentarily. Members should ensure that they are focused on their task and in a distraction-free zone when performing the particular task. So for example, this person made claims, okay? So they're not paying attention, they're being distracted. So then what are the objects distracting this person? That should be up here, right? For example, are they here? I'm purely in silly land now, right? I'm speculating because I'm not the one who investigated. If I was investigating this, I believe they're being distracted. Then by whom or by what, right? What are different ways you can be distracted in the kitchen? Are they blaring music? Is it because he's sharpening this thing while cooking this thing, while cutting this other thing, and this and that and the other? Or is there too many people there in the kitchen talking to him? Which one is it, right? Because then that's the cause you're trying to address, right? So for example, if really all his buddies are there, they're horsing around, they're distracting him while he's sharpening and all that stuff, then all your resources are not focused on, right, that he has too many jobs to do in the kitchen, that you need more help, right? That's not the solution, right? Here, they live the solution. Well, don't get distracted. Well, we don't even know what the sources of the distraction are. Is it an actual object with agency, an actual person, or multiple people? Or is it the environment itself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? For example, slipping. The hand slipped here, entering silly land again, right? I'm speculating. For example, here, I see an object, tilt fryer. What kind of liquids are in fryers?
Oil.
Oil, right? So I don't know. So here, I'm speculating, all right? So here, whenever I cook or fry chicken on my own stove, like literally, everything is covered in oil because everything is splashing like this, right? And what happens when oil is splashing on different surfaces? What happens to those surfaces, right? They get slippery, okay? So is it one possible reason why it slipped? That people are leaving their knives or their tools around the tilt fryer, everything's spraying, so everything's gotta be covered in a film of oil, so the handle or whatever it is might not be as not slippery, right? And then he's slicing it and things like that. So is it the property? Because he said the direct cause, which is true. The thing that cut him is the knife. So is it a property of the knife, right? Here's another property of the knife. Okay. So what if people bought shitty knives, right? That constantly needs to be sharpened all the time, right? So that's another avenue. So if you bought proper knives, so buy once, cry once, right? It's a saying, okay? So if you bought proper knives, they don't lose their dull, they don't get dull. Then yeah, you will reduce the honing, things like this. So if you believe that it's the knife, you might get another accident. Then another possible solution, right, to address the cause that it's the knife. I've worked in a kitchen for about a year, Tucker's Marketplace, when I was in high school. Some places they have something to protect your hand. What does that look like? What kind of glove does it look like? It looks like a glove. Some people might call it a conflict. What is it?
Steel glove.
Steel glove, right? Maybe some people might call it chainmail. So that's another possible corrective action solution if you believe that there's something wrong with the knife. That's the direct cause, right? Or you layer it on. So no distraction, identify the distraction, and then layer on other PPE just in case, right? That they do get distracted, because that's the nature of the beast in the kitchen. They're gonna go fast, so you might as well put in there some steel gloves, whatever it might cost. Put in the budget, have them wear it. So then, yeah, if they slip, it's not gonna cut them. Things like this. Okay. So this is what I mean about. So these things are not internally consistent. What this person is doing. Okay. Especially here, right? So this person just shut their brain off and literally just put their unknown unclassified, because in his brain, he's looking for a code. Okay, he's looking for a code. So he stopped thinking about what he's doing now and understanding the nature of this thing. Here, you can see the same thing here. Okay, so this one, let's look at this. Okay, so during morning PT, brackets run, Corporal such and such reported having mild chest discomfort and difficulty breathing, and was subsequently sent to the Wainwright Hospital as the MIR was closed. Okay, so that's like literally the sequence of events. He ran, chest pain, and that's it, right? That's the resolution. Okay, that's the resolution. Okay, now, okay, physical condition, right? And basically here, what is it? The direct cause is his physical condition. No specific hazard, awareness training applicable, fine. Staff are to ensure physical training is not overly hazardous to candidate immediately. Okay, so for example, what type of information is missing from the brief description? If you were to resolve exactly what happened on that day. Do we know when his chest started hurting? First, do we even know the nature? Maybe you guys know because you guys work, you guys are military. You know what this morning PT is all about. I don't know, right? So do we know what exactly is the nature of this run? Are they running on flat ground? Are they running uphill? Are they running on uneven terrain? Are they carrying stuff with them on the run, etc., etc., etc.? Here, we're missing information. His mild chest discomfort, did it happen at the beginning of the run, in the middle of the run, or in the end of the run, right? Because this person is claiming that the solution is staff are to ensure physical training is not overly hazardous. Okay, so what's wrong with that? What is that? So what information do we need to assess this claim it's overly hazardous? What kind of information do we need? We need to figure out what the nature of the run is. Okay, so this to me, when I read this, it implies it's either somewhere in the middle of the run or at the end of the run that this person is experiencing this mild chest discomfort, right? But here, you're saying it's a physical condition. Okay, so if it's physical condition, it's something about the object, right? The person himself, right? So to me, okay, it's something about himself. Then it might be in the beginning or something early in the run, right? But this is overly. So is it true that at any point of this run, this person is not capable of doing this? How are we going to reduce this? How do we know how overly hazardous this thing is? Okay? We don't know, right? So we don't know. Okay, that's the problem when people do this stuff, is because they only take things for granted because they're there, they conceive of certain things the way they've seen it, but they cannot reproduce that on a piece of paper to explain to someone for them to be able to understand what is going on here, because all this stuff is being sent to Ottawa, and people in Ottawa are not there, right? They're not there. People in Ottawa are like me, okay? People in Ottawa are just literally analyzing or doing trends analysis on the codes that you're putting down, right? So imagine this, if they're doing trends analysis on an accident type and this thing has been classified as unknown, right? Is it truly unknown? We don't know what happened to that guy, right? But just talking to him, oh yeah, what were you doing when it slipped, right? Very simple, okay? That's the idea, okay? So hopefully, so now, whoever it was that said no value, I will yield the floor to you now. And don't worry, please tell me why it is of no value to you, and hopefully I can adjust what I'm talking, if I can, right? And don't worry, you won't hurt my feelings. I have zero feelings. I'm a sarcastic, cynical robot. So I yield the floor if you choose to want to explain to me why you believe there's no value. All right, I'll give you 5 minutes. And then if not, I'll just assume you might be shy or something. Okay, so that's that. All right, with that said, I'm gonna get to the actual slides, and then yeah, so that you can see all the different answers that are possible for the exam tomorrow. Okay, all right.
I got a question.
Sure.
Do you have to put in a code in them boxes, or can you just give a explanation? Or does every
I
box have
believe
to
you
have
have
a
to
code?
put in a code. You
Okay.
have to put in a code. But to me, I would put in an explanation, right?
You
Put
can
your
expand
thoughts.
upon it.
Expand upon it, right? That's the problem when you create codes, is that people who create codes, they try to chop up reality because they want to make things easier for them, right? Because imagine whoever bureaucrat has to read your stuff. If you actually have to put down your thoughts on paper and what happened, well, someone has to read that, right? Read that. And then someone has to read that and then put in the proper code. Okay, but then they've offloaded all that work to you guys. So you guys are now expected probably to put in the codes. So that makes their job easier. Oh yeah, well that's the code that he put, right? Well, I don't know. That's what he put, right? So it's not my fault. That's what he put, right? Okay. So it's just kind of like shifting of the thing, right? The responsibility. Okay. Okay. That's cynical Alejandro. All right. So let's get to the actual thing. Okay. Did that. Okay. Purpose for the course. Why investigate? Yeah. Every hazardous occurrence is evidence that a failure has occurred, of course. Somewhere in the 5 major categories that govern the workplace. So for example, if you look at your guide, okay, they gave you or recommend that you use these super labels: material, task, management, personnel, or the environment. This is what you're supposed to go and look at, major categories, and investigate, right? The material, the task, the guy sharpening the knife. Management, are they making this guy go faster in the kitchen, right? The personnel, is there something about him? Is he trained? Does he know how to sharpen knives, right? The environment, is it distracting? right? Is everything like literally tight spaces, okay? Blah, blah. And here, again, it's just labels. Just like when I showed you in my thing, right? These are the labels that I know how to use. So I use these labels. Your guide uses, where is it? These labels, right? So some of my labels overlap with some of your labels, right? It's up to you. Literally, at the end of the day, you figure out what labels or what categories in your mind works for you, and that's how you're going to understand the nature of the problem, right? Something has gone wrong or was not properly identified and addressed in the first place. Okay. Purpose for the course: beyond the legal and moral reasons for investigating hazardous occurrence, it is very likely that the conditions will reoccur. Okay. That's why we must need to understand the nature of the problem. So when you make a claim, you have to be able to back up that claim. I think this is the cause of this accident, distraction. This guy, right? Person A, person B, person C, at the time, they were telling them a story. He was looking him in the eye while they were telling a story while he's sharpening like this, and that's how he cut, right? So these are the objects, okay? And then that will let you, oh yeah, by the way, guys, when he's doing this part of the job, no talking, okay? Then you can talk after on your break, things like that, okay? So that's you making a recommended action that directly addresses what you believe is the actual cause. If you believe the actual cause of the slip is oily, because the handle of the knife was oily, as well as probably the blade. Well, yeah. Well, how did it become oily? Oh, yeah, it's probably from the oil from the fryer. Well, why is it oily? Because people now have been leaving all the tools of the kitchen beside this oil fryer instead of putting them back in their proper place, away from all this stuff. Oh, yeah, by the way, now that we notice all this oil is splashing, let's remove all this kind of like equipment, and we can see the back of this stove or whatever fryer. Oh, look at this film of oil. Possible hazard, okay? Possible fire hazard. Oh, now we learned something too. Just because we can identify objects not only from this specific cut, but this cut gave us a glimpse of a bigger problem potentially in our workplace. That's how it works, right? So that's why you have to be good at identifying objects that you think is a cause, because that object might relate to something else. Because the drum that fell that I described yesterday, yeah, that's the drum that got broken, right? An event. But the drum falling straight is related to workers around the no bueno zone, right? It only didn't hit them because it wasn't windy. If it was windy, it will hit them. That object is related to other objects in that space based on certain factors, certain conditions, okay? That's the thing that you have to understand, right? Perhaps with more serious consequences, unless all the failures that led to the occurrence are identified and removed. Simply put, a thorough investigation can save lives. Okay, fine. These are platitudes, right? Very easy to say on a slide, but to actually manifest this in reality, you can only rely on your thinking in your approach to a problem, right? Policy. It is in D&D policy that all hazardous occurrences are investigated to determine cause and recommendations made to prevent recurrences. The overall aim of hazardous occurrence investigations is to prevent recurrence, identify previously unknown hazards, help formulate preventive measures, and meet regulatory, investigative, and reporting requirements. And also, the philosophy under your accident investigation that this is a no-fault system, right? That you're investigating the accident not to figure out who to blame. You're investigating the accident simply to figure out what happened, not necessarily to look for someone to blame, right? That's the underlying philosophy of your policy. Hint, hint, might be on the exam. Okay? Course objective, to train designated personnel on how to conduct the investigation. Yep, that's exactly what we'll do today, day 2. So nearly every accident is preventable. Making a formal process to determine why and how it occurred is key to preventing it from happening again. Well, guess what? This platitude, or this kind of like high-arching statement on this slide, that is literally what box 4, box 7, and box 8 is all about. That's it. This thing that I've described for you, right? Event sequence, identify the cause, present your solution that addresses the cause, and the causes come from your event sequence. And the event sequence is formed in a proper way based on your collection of the data, physical evidence, documents you review, photos and sketches you make, and witnesses you interview. Right? That's it. Okay. Every hazardous occurrence is an opportunity to learn and use this knowledge to prevent future occurrences with their associated human and financial cost. Fine. Okay. So this idea of opportunity to learn, the way you can engage in learning is you also must understand what it is that you're doing when you're writing a description of the event in box number 4, right? You have to get it straight in your own mind of exactly what happened. You just don't start randomly putting down verbs and nouns in this haphazard way. You gotta like sketch it out in your mind, step by step on what happened here, right? Okay. This is accomplished by determining all causes. Again, this is very utopian. Okay. I mean, it's easy to say, but it's almost impossible to do that for real in the real world because you have time and resource constraints, right? And you also have you are limited by what you know, right? Because how can you identify? So basically, in the world of knowing things, there are things that you know, there are things that you don't know, right? And then there are things that you know you don't know, right? Still no problem. I know I don't know this. Let me learn now. I'll have someone to teach me, or I'll learn for myself. And what is the other combination? Actually, there's 2 more combinations. There are things you don't even know. You don't know. Okay, then you cannot possibly identify those causes, right? Unknown unknowns. And there are people who walk around that think they know something, but they actually don't know that thing that they think they know, right? Also not good. Okay. All right. So determine the potential for and/or extent of injury to personnel and damage to property, and then recommend corrective action, communicate lessons learned, okay, and assist responsible authorities in deciding the allocation of safety resources. Okay, fine, right here. How can we possibly communicate lessons learned when we read something like this? We don't know what the distractions are. How can we communicate? So we're just basically communicating a lesson, this abstract idea. Hey guys, yeah, don't be distracted when you're slicing or when you're sharpening knives, right? Well, you don't need an accident, okay? You don't need an accident to tell people that, right? So it's kind of like a meaningless thing, okay? Well, you don't need an accident to tell people that, right? But what we want is what happened here, right? What happened is this always recurring, right? If we think that people are always talking to people while they're sharpening knives, and that's happening all the time on a Monday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, we can address that, right? Because we can point to objects that are the distraction. If people are blaring, if this guy, right, likes to watch, I don't know, something on his phone while he's cooking or was here, I'm presuming, right? Silly world, okay? Right? Maybe that's another way of he's being distracted, right? So here, you as a supervisor, you can learn, oh, this is going on underneath my nose. I don't even know about it. That's how that guy was distracted because he wasn't looking at the honing steel. He was watching something or was listening to something, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So that's why you have to be specific. Okay. Assist responsible authority. Yeah, fine. Okay. Right, that's the first outline. Definitions. Okay. So you have to know as well. I mean, you should have learned this in your individual safety management course. Okay. Hazardous occurrence. So this definition of hazardous occurrence does not come from the kosher. It does not come from the labor code. This definition comes from your volume 1, volume 2, and I think the National Joint Council directives. Hazardous occurrence is an undesirable event which results in or has the potential to result in injury or illness to personnel, material losses, and/or property damage, and includes the following terms: accident and incident. Okay, and an accident is an event in space and time. An incident is a potential, meaning near miss. Okay, an undesired event that results in physical harm or occupational illness to a person or damage to material, works, or buildings. Incident, an undesired event that could but does not result in physical harm or occupational illness to a person or damage to material, works, or buildings. Okay, fine. Hint, hint. Might be on the exam. Okay, right here, knowing this definition, right? I mean, yeah, you're gonna get perfect on the exam, but does that help you in figuring out solutions to problems? Probably not, right? It's just memorizing factoids. Work injury, any injury or occupational illness, including work-related sports injuries suffered by an employee in the course of her employment. Fine. Okay, then basically you have two definitions, disabling and non-disabling. Okay, here, disabling injury, a work-related illness or injury which prevents the employee from returning to work or effectively performing all the duties connected with his or her regular work on any working day subsequent to the day on which the injury occurred, or results in the loss of a body member or part thereof, or in the permanent impairment of a body function. Okay, so this comes from the coach regs. So basically, in layman's terms, Monday you get injured, you seek medical attention beyond first aid. Okay, you can't return back to work the next day. Disabling injury. You can return back to work on a Tuesday the next day, but your restricted duty is going to be called a disabling injury. Non-disabling injury, right? A work-related illness or injury which results in medical attention beyond first aid, but involves no lost time beyond the day or shift or watch on which the injury occurred. Monday you got injured. They gave you first aid. You decided, yeah, I should probably see my doctor about this cut. It might get infected. So now you sought medical attention beyond first aid, but you're able to come back on a Tuesday, full duties, just like this guy. Okay, so this, right? So let's assume he went beyond first aid. Here, no restrictions, no days off work. So this is going to be counted as a non-disabling injury, right? Assuming he went to go see medical attention beyond first aid. Okay? And first aid treatments of a minor scratch, cut, burn, etc., which does not result in subsequent medical attention by a physician. Hint, hint, I'll be on the exam. The only thing, technically, that does not require the filling out of a 663 is first aid, okay? And you can figure that out from your volume 1, okay? There's a chapter in volume 1 that tells you if any of these things happen, you must fill out your D&D form 663, and the only thing missing from that list is first aid. Okay? So you can infer that first aid's technically, you're not supposed, you don't have to fill out the D&D form 663. You fill out the first aid register. But in the real world, in practice, right, people have been taught or told by local practice in different bases or wings that, yeah, fill out the D&D form. We want you guys to fill out the D&D form 663 anyway, even though it's first aid, just in case that this cut that we think is first aid, right? We treat it as first aid, okay? We're not gonna write it out on a D&D form 663 because it's first aid. Suddenly that cut got infected. That should have been filled out the D&D form 663 because now you have to go see a doctor for antibiotics and such. Blah, blah, blah. And then people are looking, well, where's the first aid? Oh, where's the D&D form 63 for that event, right? So remember, that's the difference between administrative stuff and real world, right? They're boxing it in. They're boxing in first aid. But in the real world, a first aid thing can become a medical thing, right? So that's the idea, okay? So in some bases or wing or formation, they tell people, yeah, even though it's first aid, fill out the first aid register, and then go ahead and do the 663 as well. So now you'll have to ask Clyde and what the local practice is in Gagetown. But at least on paper, you don't have to fill out the 663. And for the purposes of the exam, yeah, you don't have to, if you were to answer that question, yeah, first aid does not require technically a 663, right? So
yeah, but
so go ahead.
Alejandro, if I can jump in there.
Sure.
If you start filling out 663 for first aid treatment, you're going to quadruple the number 63 be filled in, and you're going to encourage first of all. Then second, if a cut turns into an infection, first aid was still first aid.
Sorry,
it is not the problem here. The cut was not done properly, and then isn't that the way it is? Then you fill out 63 because the first aid was not done properly, right?
Yeah, that's right. So here I'm making a point. Sometimes when I speak, I'm hyperbolic, right? That's exactly what I want from people, right? So remember my big picture idea, right? Context or trade-offs, right? So in the world of health and safety, right? There are unintended consequences. So the intended consequence is to capture, right? Just in case that this thing becomes infected, right? So the unintended consequence that the 63s are going to quadruple. So administrative burden is always a trade-off, right? Yeah, so that's why for you guys, that's why what I'm saying is that it's going to be up to you to decide, am I gonna 663 this or am I not, right? Is this cut deep enough that we think that this person is going to seek medical attention beyond first aid? Or, for example, a property of the individual. If you know that your worker loves going to the doctor for every little thing, then yeah, you probably should 663 that right off the get-go, because this person is going to go see the doctor anyway. So then that's going to be medical attention beyond first aid. But if you know that the property of the object, the personality of the worker, yeah, they're going to walk it off. The cut is pretty deep, whatever, it's not that deep. You're just going to walk it off first aid. This guy's not going to go see the doctor, right? Then yeah, you might leave it as first aid, right? Hoping that it's going to heal properly. And then probably it's so deep that he thinks, oh yeah, it's fine. Then now he really has to see a doctor because it's swelling. Then at that point you have to 663, right? Trade-offs. So perfect. That's the exact trade-off of that thing. It's administrative burden. Guess what else creates administrative burden? So for example, if you train your workers to report every single near miss, what happens to your 63? If you leave it to the hands, hey guys, I want every near misses reported, okay? We're trying to solve problems here, every single near miss. The problem with near misses, these are non-events, so they are open to interpretation, right? They're open to interpretation. So for example, oh yeah, he's sliding in, oh, I think that's a near miss, let me report that, let me report that, let me report that, right? That's the problem. So that's why you have to teach people how to properly identify near misses, because in the world of health and safety, there are studies in different industries that there is a ratio, okay, of a certain number of near misses that you count that leads to a number of accidents or events in that workplace, right? So the ratios are different depending on what industry or what it is that you're looking at, right? So that's why there's a value in reporting near misses, because it gives you a glimpse of what possibly might happen in the workplace. And later on, when I show you the videos, when we do the exercise, you'll see exactly what I mean by near misses, right? But yeah, I completely accept that it will quadruple. So for example, I'm not going to name the base or the wing, where the wing general safety said to them, no, we want you guys to also put down first aids as 663. Okay, then that's what they want to do. That's what people have been instructed to do, even though technically you don't have to do that based on your rules in your volume 1. But then the unintended consequence of that will be quadrupling or tripling administrative burden. Okay, it all depends what people feel like doing. Okay, so that's the idea. Yeah.
The problem I think we're having with our forces right now is that every time a CF98 is put in, there's a 663 that goes with it, and there's so many and people are being told to report every single little thing that happens to them at the workplace, right. every little ache and pain and everything else. So a lot of times change of command is flooded with CF98s dealing with them as 663s for small little things like ingrown toenails and things like this that are hurting them on PT when they're running. So, because everybody's trying to cover their butt so they can maybe get a little bit of money from a VAC. You know what I mean?
Right,
so
right.
Our system is broken in regards to this, and a better solution has to be come up with it.
It's broken in the sense that people did not properly think things through. Human nature. When you put a pot of gold at the end of something, because of human nature, they're gonna go for that pot of gold, right? So if they think that there's a pot of gold for every little CF98s, and they don't truly understand the nature of the thing, yeah, and then also they're instructed. Not only are you putting for example, if you didn't even tell people to write down every little thing, all you did was put a pot of gold at the end of that road, they will naturally do that, okay? They'll put in all they'll CF98 anything, right? Because there's a pot of gold at the end, right? So people haven't really thought things through. when they make an instruction or they think the solution to make sure that, of course, it's good to protect our veterans, that we have to take care of you guys, right? Because you guys are volunteering to protect us, freedom, and all the rest of it, right? Of course, we want to take care of people, but in that good sense, right? You can go overboard now because people haven't thought things through. We're now sacrificing everything on that altar. So now every little thing, of course, it's not a surprise to me. It's gonna get reported, right? So for example, if you do the same thing for a D&D form 663, okay, you put a giant pot of gold for civilians or whatever, right? On the end of that, I guarantee you, right, there's gonna be 663s being filled out, okay, all the time, okay, all the time. Like there's no questions asked. You just gonna find another witness to say that this thing happened 3 years ago and record everything, blah blah. Yeah, put that pot of gold, and people will go after it, right? That's how it happens. Okay? I mean, it's broken in that sense. That's why I'm explaining to you right at the get-go, at the primary source. You must understand the nature of the problem right at the primary data, so that people who are supposedly crunching these in trends analysis that is remote to you guys did not see what happened. They can at least, if they are interested in reading what your words, they can understand what is actually happening in the different bases, wings, and formations all across Canada. And they're just not simply coding this thing, assigning it a number, collecting it in an Excel file, and then sorting it. Oh, yeah, and they count, oh yeah, that's how many inherent hazards that we have. This is how many boredoms that we have. This is how many unknowns that we have. Wait a minute. What are these unknowns? How could it be unknown? We have to go through each single D&D Form 663 that carries an unknown label, because is it truly unknown, right? What is going on here? What's going on? No, they're just counting unknowns, okay? But nobody knows. Nobody knows, okay? Nobody knows. Not even the people filling it out know, okay? Okay, right? It's broke. It's very hard to fix. It's almost, I can tell you right now, it's literally impossible to fix. It's impossible. All right? Because there are too many gears in this giant wheel, right? And they're not talking to one another. All right, role of the investigator. Okay? Same as the objective of the course. The role of the investigator is, sure, determining all causes, right? So that assumes certain things. Know things, you don't know things, you know what you don't know, you don't even know what you don't know, you think you know, but you actually don't know, right? Determine the potential for and or extent of injury to personnel and damage to property, sure. Recommend corrective action, communicate lessons learned, and assist. I mean, we already said that. Responsibility. So this is straight out of your volume 1, okay, chapter 2. The group principle of a group or commander of each command, area, formation, base, wing, or unit shall ensure that all workplace-related hazardous occurrences are investigated and reported, right? Very easy to say, but is it really happening in the real world? Probably not, okay? I mean, they're reporting it, but is the report being done properly? I don't know. Coordination of these requirements normally falls within the purview of the GSO. Notice, the actual responsibility of implementation, carrying it out, is on the group commander or the senior civilian manager, what have you, right? The coordination of this stuff is going to fall on the general safety officer, okay? But the UGSO is basically an advisor to the commander, okay? GSO. GSO is a staff officer who is a specialist advisor to the commander and staff and all members affecting general safety program. Coordination of the hazardous occurrence investigation normally falls within the purview of the GSO. In case of serious accidents, the investigation lead is the base general safety office, just like that report that I'm going to take up tomorrow, right? Serious accident, the guy got his face burnt off. So then the wing general safety office of Winnipeg, they led the investigation of that fairly serious accident. I think he got like 2nd or 3rd degree burns, things like this. Okay. Now, since I think there are 2 or 3 secondary duty UGSOs in the group, let's go to I think it's volume 1, chapter 2. I believe it's paragraph 19. Okay, let me show you chapter 2. Oops, went too far. Just want to make sure that the UGSOs in the group, a lot is expected from you as a UGSO. I mean, you pretty much have to be a subject matter expert in everything. Let me just show you where you can find your actual responsibilities. Chapter 2, paragraph 19, I believe.
What volume was that again?
Volume, sorry, volume 1. My apologies, volume 1. You should have also taken this in your safety management individual course, right? Here, okay, here. Okay, where is it? Here, okay, right there. Volume 1, Chapter 2, paragraph 19. And it goes on. The GSO is a staff officer. As such, he or she is a specialist advisor to the commander and staff on all matters, right? All matters, okay, affecting the general safety program, and is responsible to manage the implementation of the program. So the actual responsibility of implementation goes on the higher ups. You're just an advisor and you're managing how this thing is being implemented, right? Of the program. GSO responsibilities fall into 7 main areas. Area number 1, program development. Area number 2, administration and evaluation. 3, training and education. 4, promotion and motivation. 5, consulting, liaising, and monitoring. 6, accident prevention, right? That's why you're here. Okay? 6, investigation and analysis. 6, safety councils and committees, and 7, return to work. Okay, and if you want elaboration on any of these 7 main areas, then you go to paragraph 20, okay, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. Okay, and these are giant topics in health and safety. These are gigantic, right? And yet, as a secondary duty, you're expected to be a subject matter expert to be able to make give advice on how any of this stuff is done. Okay, so that is a giant tall order for any person. Okay, let alone that's their secondary duty. Okay, right? So that's that. So responsibilities, commanding officers. Okay, so you can find the area. I don't think there's any commanding officers in this room, so they usually don't show up. Go back to chapter 2, figure out what paragraph, and then read your responsibilities. So commanding officers shall ensure that procedures are put in place to ensure the investigator's report is entered into the Guardian Health and Safety module. Okay, yeah. So I've never worked for you guys. I don't know what this database is all about. So I'll leave it to Clyde, who is having issues joining. But he wants to join, but I'll leave it to Clyde to answer any questions about Guardian. The Guardian Health and Safety module is the corporate electronic system. Yep.
Clyde's not on the thing, but one thing that talking with him, that's the problem that we're having on the base in Gagetown right now, is that the 663s aren't being put into Guardian. Yep. And the 663s are just sitting in the desk drawer of the UGSO, or somebody hasn't put them or actually action them into Guardian, and that has to, and then after that, where the files have to come back through the base safety officer. That's not happening. So they can finalize the report.
From that detailed description, the nature of the problem that I'm going to guess, right? So here, fundamentally, it's a data entry problem, right? So what's causing the data entry problem? So something about this database, for whatever reason, it's either not putting it in the right fields or the right places that you can cross-reference, right? So basically, you're trying to enter this thing in, it's like going nowhere, right? So maybe that's why people are not putting it in there. So yeah, that's fine. Keep everything as a hard copy. So at the end of the day, when all that stuff piles up, someone, right? So then you have to pick an object. Who's the object that's going to be entering this thing into this database? Do they know what they're doing? Because basically, data entry, do they know their way around databases? Are they putting things in the proper fields, right? Because when you, I don't know if you ever set up a database, right? Proper fields, because the way any software works, they cross-reference the fields. So these things need to go into the right fields, right? Or else you're gonna lose the information, okay? Things like that. And basically, yeah, talk to the safety officers just as a matter of like knowing who the different people are, the signatures, having a good relationship with them, and let them know, oh yeah, by the way, we're stuck. There's a bottleneck, okay? It's piling up. We're not able to enter this. And what is the problem? So let's pretend the problem persists. It piles up. What happens if this thing is not in Guardian, right? Does that mean that people are not getting compensated? Does that mean we still have all the information, right? It's going to take some time for us to actually enter it in, but then is it holding up something else down this pipeline for a person who got hurt? Okay? All right. Like in anything that you do, you got to know how the process works step by step. And you got to know, right? You got to know the people. That's why I always tell people you have to close your eyes, right? Okay. So for example, when I submit an application, when I do this, whatever paperwork to renew my license or this, I close my eyes. Okay, it's gonna go here, and then this person is telling me he's gonna hand it off to this other person. Okay, I never met this person, but I have a picture of an object. Yeah, it's gonna arrive at this person's desk. They're gonna do this to this thing, and then it's gonna go here, right? So that's how you kind of like map this out, okay, on what needs to happen and who's gonna do what, okay? If you don't know who's gonna be doing what, who's going to fix your Guardian, and what's wrong with it, then yeah, then it's just in the ether, right? It's just in the ether, okay? It is the responsibility of the supervisor to report all injuries, including sports injuries, occurring to his or her personnel or damage to material under his or her control. Fine. Okay. You can all find this in chapter 2, right? Sorry, here, let me just show you. Again, putting this thing paraphrased on a slide, it's very superficial. That's why I always point people to the actual source document, because when everything is said and done, okay, the REA slides, these REA slides that have been blessed by DSafeG, right? They told us what to put on the slides, okay? Right? These REA slides are not going to help you, okay? What is going to help you is to actually go into your primary documents and look for this stuff. So that's why I was explaining to you guys yesterday of the 4 basic skills, right? So you gotta find, if you're a supervisor, you go there. If you're an individual, you go there. If you're a command, you go there, okay? Simple, right? But here, you put it on the slide, there it is, okay? Here, put it on the slide, there it is, okay? Here, okay? You go there, okay? You gotta know where to find this stuff. Because these slides won't help you. They're very superficial, right? The Workplace Health and Safety Committee has to be notified of all hazardous occurrences. The Workplace Health and Safety Committee can nominate members to participate in the hazardous occurrence investigation, but they do not have the power to carry out or lead their independent investigations. Do you know where they pulled this from? Right here, the Labor Code, okay? Section 135, okay? Here, again, I'm going on a sidetrack. Just to show you guys, at least I'm presuming here, I'm making presumptions. I'm stereotyping you guys, right? I'm trying to show you what you don't know, right? You gotta know what you don't know so that you gotta properly address that now you know, right? But you know it not as a factoid, right? That, oh yeah, it's trivia. I know I have no powers to lead my own investigation as a worker member of a health and safety committee, simply because Alejandro at one point told me that as a factoid. So I'm going to repeat this to someone else. I'm going to repeat this to someone else, and they're going to repeat it to someone else. And then someone down the line, well, I don't believe you, bro. How do you know that, right? Oh, well, Alejandro told me. That's how I know, right? But who's Alejandro, right? He just says stuff, like, okay. So here, like, if you go to 135, okay. Let's see, okay, 135, right? Committee, okay. Let's see. Here, 135, okay. If you look at 7 duties of the committee, if you look at ECHO, okay, here, right? A workplace committee in respect of the workplace for which it is established shall participate in all of the inquiries, investigations, studies, and inspections, just like accident investigations pertaining to the health and safety of employees including any consultations that may be necessary with persons who are professionally or technically qualified to advise the committee on those matters, right? Here, participate. So you in the committee, right? There's nowhere in your powers or duties that are given to you that you can start your own investigation, right? Your only entitlement or right is to participate, okay? So if your supervisor did not start an investigation, okay, then you as a committee member on the worker side cannot start and lead an investigation of an accident and have it be called official, right? So you have to have your supervisor first start it. I mean, they can start it by delegating you. Oh yeah, you go ahead. I'm assigning you as the qualified person to investigate that thing. Then technically, the employer or the supervisor started it, and now you're exercising your right to participate, right? Which is basically section 135(7) echo, okay, there. Okay? That's what this thing is all about. Okay? Blah, 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 blah. Right, fine, okay? Any questions on that? All right, there's no questions on that. Let's take a bit of a break there. Let's all come back at 9:10. Okay, 9:10, 10 minutes.
Alejandro, can I hijack your break for a couple of minutes?
Oh, you can try however long you want.
Sorry, yeah. So I was having problem connecting this morning. I missed the first 15 minutes of briefing, so I just got bits and pieces. At one point in time, were you addressing some comments from the comment box from last night? Is that what you from yesterday?
Yeah. So basically, I thought it would save the chat. So basically, there was basically I said that if there's no the no value and basically exam and basically not talking about the slides.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
fine with the slides, fine with the value. That's a perspective perception of things, and that does bother me. But I did. You're here to say the word exam, and then that cut off. So what did you? Can you quickly repeat what you said about the exam, about controlling F or something like that? I missed it.
Yeah. So here the format of the exam before the format of the exam is multiple choice. I believe there's like 30 questions, right?
Okay.
It's online. So basically, when a certain time tomorrow hits, that's when the exam gets released. So for example, if you try to click probably on the exam right now, you won't be able to take it, right? So there's a certain release date that someone sets. I believe it's probably Kim or my colleague Daniel, right? So they set the release date. So basically, when you click on the exam past a certain time tomorrow, then yeah, it's a multiple choice, okay? And notice that the nature of the question of the exams, it all comes from the slide deck, right? So it's basically regurgitation.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So you can find most answers to the exam literally from this REA slide deck. Some of the questions you might have to actually go to the labor code or the kosher or your volume 1 or your volume 2 to figure it out, right? But most of it is going to be from the slide deck. So that's why I'm explaining to people. Some people were concerned. Well, why is he talking about this stuff? Right? Is this actually going to be on the exam? I mean, I've heard that type of question before because I used to TA pharmacy students, right? One time I was explaining to them, right? I used to teach them medicinal chemistry. I was explaining to them how we know how certain drugs work, right? Historical studies, key studies, how we know how any of these drugs work. And then suddenly, there's about 250 of them in the class. And these 3 dudes in the front, they stopped me mid-lecture, Alejandro, and they took it upon themselves to speak on behalf of everyone else. They said, Alejandro, is this going to be on the exam? Because, okay, of course, I don't want to put the person who said that kind of along the lines feel bad, but I'm just explaining to you the nature of this kind of question, right? That like, why are you talking about this if this is not going to be the exam? So please skip all this and just tell us what's going to be in the exam. And of course, I'm very cynical, right? I shoot from the hip, right? So I literally just said, yeah, well, you got, and notice in Ontario, there used to be only one pharmacy school. It's at U of T. But ever since this thing happened, there's a second pharmacy school, which is in Waterloo. And everyone wants to go to the Waterloo pharmacy school because they have a co-op program. So literally, I shot from the hip and I got in trouble for it. And I said, oh, yeah, well, most of you here at U of T are second round draft picks at best anyway, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you probably made a lot of friends there.
And then I also said I shot from the other hip. Oh yeah, well most of you here are med school rejects anyway, right? Because all you all want to get to med school. That's why you want the A's, and that's why you want all the answers now.
Yeah. All right.
You're not interested at all in your actual field, which is pharmacology. How do you know the drugs you're telling people work? Well, the computer tells you, right? You just parroting
Yeah.
it back to the patient. So literally, about 25 of them just got up and left. Okay, got up and left.
Ooh. Yeah.
And
Okay.
I kept on going. I kept on going, and then I got
All
called
right.
to the dean's office.
All right. Well, thanks for clarifying this, and hopefully I'll be able to. My Wi-Fi will be good today. All right. Thank you, Alejandro.
No problem.
Hey Alejandro, I got a question for you.
Sure.
I haven't been able to download or find any of the resources on that Learn website.
Okay, let's see. What's the best way I can do this? Let me see how big it is. Maybe I can email it to you. Let's see. Are you able to receive external outside emails?
Not from my D&D one, but from my actual personal email I can.
Okay, let's see. Let's see how big the zip file is. Oh yeah, I cannot email it. The zip file is 50 megabytes big. I'm pretty sure it's gonna go past the max.
Cody, I can if you give me a call, I'll walk you through it.
All right, will do.
Okay.
All right.
If there's no other things, let me get another coffee before I start again. Okay, ready? All right. All right, so job safety program structured on the principle of leadership, on the principle that safety is everyone's responsibility, and on the requirement that it is an important internal responsibility of commanding officers. Fine, right? So safety is everyone's responsibility in the sense of, if you want to keep yourself from getting harmed, then yeah. But in the sense of the legislation, that the ultimate responsibility for safety falls on the shoulders of the employer, right? But from the point of view of keeping yourself healthy, then yeah, in that sense, then it's everyone's responsibility. The success of the jail safety program depends on the positive attitude and cooperation of everyone. Of course, this thing, very easy to say, okay? Right? That is just a paper idea. But in the real world, that is very difficult. Okay? Very difficult. Why investigate? Okay, we already talked about that. You're just repeating it now. All right, so the way that Ottawa wanted this thing structured is this, right? So they're gonna give you this kind of like fictitious story, and based on this fictitious story, we're gonna try and do some of these investigative techniques, right? That's talked about by your hazardous occurrence investigators guide, that little yellow booklet, right? And for me, I don't really like talking about fake stories. I'd rather talk about real things, right? That actually happened in the real world. Okay, so tomorrow, that's why I'm gonna walk you through the actual full-blown investigation from Winnipeg, because that actually happened in the real world. But I'll do what they want, so I'll read the story and we'll go through the slides and basically trying to apply the techniques or concepts that they're trying to teach you in this fictitious story. Okay, so let's read a brief description, okay, of the story. And of course, does all D&D Form 663 look like this? Is that how you see it in the real world? Yes or no? Is that like this? Like that? Like that? Right? No. Okay, again, this is what I mean by when they're trying to teach you stuff, they're trying to teach you in a way that, oh yeah, when people actually report 663s, it's gonna look like this, okay? It's gonna be full of details, chock full of details, etc., 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 okay? But usually it's not. Okay, so on November 12 at 2 p.m., an administrative worker slipped and fell in the hallway. When the member fell, they landed on the right hip and elbow. The workers in the vicinity rushed to assist the member. The member is a 55-year-old female with no pre-existing conditions that would have contributed to the outcome. The individual immediately complained of severe pain in the hip area and asked for medical assistance. They were taken to the base hospital where immediate first aid was provided. During diagnostics, the test revealed a hairline fracture of the hip bone. The worker was sent to the hospital for further medical treatment. Based on the decisions of the medical professionals, the member underwent a surgery on December 2. The member was on medical leave from November 12 up to March 1 of the following year. Okay, now, I'm not going to separate you into groups. Okay? I've done that in the past. It doesn't really work in an online setting. We're going to do this as a group, a big group. Okay? And I'm showing you in any, like, again, I keep repeating, right? In any situation, right? I always have the same method of approach, okay? And as you can guess by now, my method of approach, I'm just identifying objects in whatever story is being told to me, in whatever it is that I'm looking at, okay? In whatever it is that I'm reading, okay? In this case, okay? So let me circle animate objects. I'm gonna circle, let's pick a color, yellow, yellow, okay? Okay, so here, okay? So give me the, right? That's one object, okay? Another object, okay? Here, okay? Another object with agency, okay? Here, I was literally circling people, right? Objects, because people will wear many different hats, or will wear different hats in the workplace, and some of them might wear two hats, right? So for example, if you're sitting in a committee, you're wearing the Workplace Health and Safety Committee member hat, and you might be wearing the worker hat, right? Or you might be wearing a union hat, right? If you're on the employer side, you might be a supervisor hat, and also you're now also wearing the workplace health and safety committee hat or the co-chair hat, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So always circle the object, right? The people, right? Worker, property of that worker, administrative, right? That's something have to do with their jobs. These workers in the vicinity, right? You have to determine what property are they, right? Who are they, right? This one, right? Property of the of that object, medical professional. So that tells you, oh, they're the ones who can better assess the injury, things like this. Okay, now give me a verb about the object. This, right here, slipped. Okay, they use the word slipped and fell in the hallway. Okay, so what kind of image does that produce in your mind when someone slips?
Something on the ground or the floor.
Right, something is on the ground. So basically, their foot, right, has contact with the ground, and basically the bottom of the foot moves away quickly from the center of gravity. That's how people are slipping in certain ways, right? That's the image. For example, if I said this person tripped, how would you interpret trip as opposed to slip? There should still be something on the ground. So, go ahead.
There's an object in the way and she tripped over that object or something?
Yep, so basically, for example, here, ground, right? So the slip, like the person was saying, there's something on the ground, right? So the foot is on the actual object, and this thing, it's slipping, right? Their shoe, but it's something that's tripping, right? So that means there's something in the way on the ground, and your foot is hitting this thing, and that's why you're falling, right? Or, for example, if we say that this object, this person stepped on it, and that's why they slip, because this thing, the friction, right? It moves out of the way, not steady. So that's a slipping, right? Tripping is your foot hitting something, and that's why you're falling, right? For example, if I use the word collapse, what kind of image does that conjure up in your mind? Person standing, okay?
It falls straight down, lay on the ground.
It falls straight down, right? So these things, depending on how you imagine the scene, will tell you what possible causes might be in play. If the person is collapsing, it might be something about them, or it might be something in the air, or it might be something else, right? Okay, so that's the idea. Okay, okay. So when the member fell, they landed on the right hip object. Okay, good. So now we know it's the right hip and elbow. Okay, so for example, here, okay, that's why whenever I put an object, right? So some people, that's why when people take things for granted. So this person might take things for granted that it's the right hip. And what would you normally assume by the elbow? Which elbow is that, left or right?
Right one.
Right one, right? When you read a sentence like that, reflexively, oh yeah, I'm gonna assume it's the right elbow. For me, I want to be specific, especially if what I'm counting is someone's body parts, because ultimately these people need to be compensated. They have to make a claim. So I'm gonna say right hip, right elbow, because someone might fall, and for whatever reason, now we have to figure out if this person is making a claim of a left elbow, how did that happen, right? But pretty much that's probably the right elbow. This is the right hip. Okay. Okay. So here, my critique there. Here, what I'm doing is not inherently unfair because this is a fake story, right? So here, my critique is put direction there, right elbow, right? The workers in the vicinity, right, rushed to assist the member. The member is a 55-year-old female with no pre-existing conditions. Okay, so here, this thing, okay, they threw that in there. Okay, so here, tentatively, the word tentatively. So what does the word tentatively? What does the word tentatively mean? Tentatively.
Attempting.
Potentially.
Temporarily, right, or potentially, right? So whenever I'm trying to understand a problem or a solution to a problem or what happened, everything to me is tentative, right? Until I can solidify it with solid evidence, right? So for me here, when they make a claim, right, pre-existing condition, I'm going to tentatively, right, say that this person did not collapse, okay? Because when someone collapses, it might be something about them. Okay? But if they're saying this person collapsed, no pre-existing condition, but there might be something in the air that caused them to collapse down, right? They passed out for whatever reason. So to me, everything's tentative. So I'm gonna put that in the back of my mind, okay? Because here they use the word slip, okay? And basically, okay, now we know another property of the object. We know the property of sex. We know the property of age, okay? So now, one possibility of someone slipping is something on the ground. Give me another property of why someone can slip. Or maybe you might use the word trip, I don't know. But how else might they slip if there's nothing on the ground?
The footwear?
The footwear, right? So there's a property of the object footwear. It could be heels of some sort, or it could be flats, very no kind of like abrasive or nothing friction at the bottom of the flats, or it could be a property of the floor. So there might not necessarily be any other object like a liquid on the floor. It could just be the floor itself, or there could be something on the floor like a wax that has been put on that is related to her footwear, right? So these things, property, because of that it could be a male too, right? With a certain footwear, okay? But in this case, it's a female, right? That would have contributed to the outcome. The individual immediately complained of severe pain in the hip area, right here, right hip, okay? So suddenly later on, right, if they start mentioning left hip or something like that, that's why you got to make sure it's consistent all throughout, right? And ask for medical assistance. They were taken to the base hospital where immediate first aid was provided. During diagnostics, okay, now if you really, I'm being nitpicky now, right? What does this mean, right? Diagnostics. So you have to talk to the doctor, right? What are the diagnostics, right? So maybe you might not know. So here, probably if they're looking at the hairline fracture, the diagnostic is probably an X-ray, right? It lets you see through tissue, right? Hard things that the X-ray bounces off of, right? During diagnostics, the test revealed a hairline fracture of the hip bone. The worker was sent to the hospital for further medical treatment. Based on the decisions of this object with that property, the member underwent surgery, okay, on December 2, right? So that's about 3 weeks. The member was on medical leave, right? So here, you can already tell, right? So that's going to be a disabling injury. And now I'm piling on all other administrative things now into this thing, okay? Medical leave from November 12 up to March 1 of the following year. Okay, so now let's move on, okay? Yeah, so again, what is the consequences? Worker, right? Of course, pain, that this might be a lifelong injury that might affect her ability to do other things if it persists. Possibly, right? I know a co-worker of mine when I used to do sales. His name is Kevin. Great microscope technician. I used to sell microscopes for 5 years. And all my customers in universities always wanted Kevin to install their microscope because he's great at training them on all the different features of the microscope. And basically, Kevin was unloading a box that I had sold one time in a truck. He fell off the truck, also fractured his hip, some sort, went on painkillers, got addicted to painkillers. Okay, could never. So basically, they had to let him go because he cannot function. He's always on painkillers all the time, right? So here, this might be in play. So you'll have to figure that out, okay, later on, okay? Consequences for the employer or the organization, right? So of course, loss of productivity, right? You invested in training this person to do a particular job. So now that level of experience got injured, went out. So now you have to swap someone in new, right? So people think the jobs are very simple. Oh yeah, he can do that job. No. People doing a certain task, assuming they're doing it properly, right? That's an investment. They're good and efficient in whatever administrative thing that this person is doing. So for you to swap someone in new might not be as good. Or if you decide to like not hire someone else, get someone else as a secondary duty to cover for this person, then yeah, you're ultimately going to reduce productivity, and all the rest of it. Okay, then yeah, you can think of whatever consequences that you know for this worker or for the employer, right? There are always consequences, intended, unintended. Okay. Next, investigation procedure. Okay, and this is what your guide is telling you. So here, very high level concept. Okay, so the hazardous conditions that led to the occurrence you are investigating may still be present. Okay, so what you need to do is that whenever you're investigating something quasi serious, you gotta know that you've removed or eliminated the hazards that might still be present when you send your investigation team to actually investigate this thing. Okay, so for example, in the candy factory, the investigation I was a part of was Zineid, her arm up to the shoulder, got caught inside of this giant scale, okay, a candy scale, because of failure of lockout tagout and communication and cleaning procedures, etc., etc., etc. So now, when we're investigating, okay, what part of the scale she was reaching into that got her hand caught, well, yeah, before we went in there and started taking pictures, we better make sure that the actual scale was already locked out properly at that point. Okay, so for example, again, I'm doing an aside now, right? Just to explain certain principles. Who here does not know what lockout tagout is, or who does know what lockout tagout is? What is lockout tagout? Who knows what lockout tagout is?
It's when you lock out a piece of equipment from the electricity, put your lock on it, and it's tagged with your name so people know you're working on it.
Perfect. Okay. Now, first question: what is the most important step of lockout tagout? Doesn't matter how fancy or sophisticated your lockout tagout is.
Turning off the electricity?
No, not turning it off. The opposite. Or not the opposite, but the most important step of lockout tagout is the very last step. And what is the very last step of lockout tagout? Very last step that you do. You attempt.
Working on it, you got to make sure the machine actually isn't functioning.
Correct, right? The most important step of lockout tagout, it doesn't matter what the lockout tagout looks like, how complicated or sophisticated you're putting the locks on. The most important step of lockout tagout is you try the best that you can to start that machinery, and it should not start if you got everything right. You put in the right points, okay? The lock in the right points. Then yes, now we're fairly confident that we put it in the right lockout tagout points to lock out the electricity that serves this complicated machinery. Then now I'm gonna stick my hand in there and figure out what Zineid was doing. And I'm gonna go in there into the ovens with the hydraulic thing to see what's going on, right? So that's the idea, right? So for any of these safety things, programs that you're doing, you gotta know the principles behind any of this stuff, okay? So for example, the concept of lockout tagout, the number one rule is control, right? So it is embodied with one lock, one key, right? And the person holding the key to the lock is the person who's actually in danger. So now these tunneling people that I'm working with or consulting for, right? They're violating that rule. So I don't want to get too much into the details of this thing unless someone's interested. But the color head of that tunnel boring machine that I showed you, right? The problem is that if it's having trouble crushing the rock, someone has to go inside that conveyor belt that removes the muck, go inside that head. And that head is basically a confined space and it moves, right? And basically, if that thing starts moving while someone's inspecting what's going on in the color head, they're gonna get cut in half because it rotates, okay? And they're proposing to me that, Alejandro, don't worry, we only have one key that we have to insert it in this fancy electronics panel, the control station of the tunnel boring machine, which is like 60 feet away from the color head. Don't worry, he's the guy that's gonna do it. There's only one key. He's gonna take it out while the guy is in the color head, and he can't start the machine. Okay, so they violate the number one principle. So I told them I don't care how fancy the electronics are, right? The principle of lockout tagout, the person who's actually in danger has to be holding that key. Okay, so you give him that key. while he goes in there. And then if it's really true that you can't start this tunneling boring machine without that key, then yeah, he'll be fine. Then when he comes out, he'll hand it to the guy, and he can start it and rotate the head. He goes back in. Or you put in a clamshell, put his lock, and because they're concerned about losing the key. Losing the key. Well, Alejandro, so they say. Alejandro, we don't want to give him the key because he might lose it in there. Okay? And then I'm like imagining, really, a multi-million-dollar equipment like this, if you ever lose this key, you can never ever start it ever again, right? So to me, that sounds like bullshit, right? because don't want to do any of this additional steps. Right? Okay, so you got to make sure that when you send your investigating team, that the hazards you can identify have been mitigated. Okay? If required, seeking assistance from police, fire, or others to determine if any hazards still exist. Well, this is the thing, right? If you're being trained properly, you should have a portfolio of being able to understand hazards in your workplace. Okay, right? So you should not be walking around with too many unknowns, especially if you're a supervisor, right? Because you're the one in charge of the workplace. So for every single object in your workplace, if you're the supervisor, you better know what the hazards are coming out of that object, right? So that's why yesterday I spent a lot of time here. Okay, here. That's how you understand hazards, right? The objects, right? Okay, so you got to know that. Okay, you're setting in your team. Okay, use caution when approaching the scene and ensure that appropriate procedures and equipment are used whenever necessary. Fine. Okay, first, last, and always protect yourself and your team. Well, this only assumes you actually understand the objects in your workplace and the hazards that they present. Okay, investigation procedure. Okay, so identify PPE. So when I was in Winnipeg, they even showed me their investigators kit. They keep it in a black backpack. Okay, they have all their equipment in there, and they have some pretty fancy equipment in there too. For example, they have a forensics camera. Like this camera, they showed me. Oh, I had to look. It's like a forensic level camera that is only a read only. You can't edit anything in the camera, and it logs when you pull something out, right? And they also have like a fancy meter stick, like a laser. All you have to do is shine the laser. It'll tell you what distance is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, these are coming out of your guidebook. Okay, so pick ones. I mean, you guys know your workplace. If there's ever any accident in your workplace, you'll know, hopefully, what you should be putting in your kit. Okay? Identify PPE and environmental clothing requirements needed to approach or work at the scene. And these may include, right, but not an exhaustive list: hard hat, coveralls, gloves, protective footwear, respirator, warm clothing, wet weather clothing, high-vis vest, hearing protection, eye protection, fall protection. Fine. Okay. So identify any pre-existing hazards associated with the workplace. Okay. Here. Okay. Well, you don't do this during the actual accident investigation necessarily. So that's why yesterday I was telling you guys, right? You should always have a risk assessment, right? Even though nothing is happening in your workplace, like a crazy accident, because most of the time, nothing really bad happens in the workplace. They're all minor or medium level injuries, okay? So you're supposed to be creating this risk assessment all the time and updating it, right? So that's how you know what are the hazardous things are in your workplace based on your risk assessment, okay? That's what that thing is for, okay? Of course, we already talked about it. Lockout or tag out electrical or mechanical equipment. You blank pipes or pressure lines, right? So for example, pneumatic, which is pressurized air, right? Or hydraulic, pressurized fluid, right? And basically, I mean, pressurized liquid, right? To a physicist, they're all fluids anyway, right? Air and liquid, okay? Conduct atmospheric testing, okay? Here, this one is a very vague advice or recommendation, right? Okay, conduct atmospheric testing, but that's on paper. In practice, you gotta know what you're testing for, right? Is it carbon monoxide? Is it hydrogen sulfide? Is it cyanide? Is it methane? What is it, right? You gotta know. And do people actually know the instruments that they're using, how it works? Do they know how to calibrate said instrument? And what is the calibration procedure? What gas are they calibrating it against, right? Or are they just pushing buttons, waiting for the thing to beep, okay? Not reading the manual, right? So here, again, that's what I'm trying to impress upon you. the stuff that is written on these slides are very superficial. Okay, even though it will let you answer the exam perfectly, in the real world, that has no meaning. You have to know what you're doing, right? Securing structures. Okay, yeah, you gotta know. Okay, establishing traffic, pedestrian control. It of course is on a roadway or flight line, sure, and identifying any chemicals at the scene and their handling, disposing procedure, right? So this assumes, right, that you know how to read SDS sheets. This assumes you know nature of chemicals, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Okay. Just knowing, oh, I'm supposed to identify chemicals at my scene, right? That's not knowledge, right? That's not knowledge. It doesn't do anything. Okay. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. Next. Okay. You are supposed to have a plan, of course. It's always good to have a plan for when things go bad. Okay, and when you have to investigate when things go bad, right? So that's why in the world of health and safety, since most of the time nothing really bad happens, so a lot of the things that you do in health and safety is the thought experiment, right? It's in the imagining outcomes in the workplace. Okay, so that's why you're basing your plan on, right? Oh, so if this happens, what is our plan to go out and investigate when my guy here doing his primary task and this type of accident happens? How are we going to investigate it? Like, for example, okay, when Zineid got her arm caught in that scale, right? There was no real plan, right? You just kind of like make it on the spot. Okay, is she okay? Okay, we're gonna go take pictures of this thing. We're going to talk to these people, production, packaging, the mechanic who's also involved, and Zineid and her supervisors and the thing, right? So you kind of like assemble this thing as it's happening, right? But if you really want to do it for real, and doing things for real and properly is always going to be time consuming, right? So that's why when I say this, I'm speaking from the point of view of this utopian world of doing things properly at every step of the way in the workplace. Okay, so ideally, if you're a good supervisor, you know exactly the primary tasks that you people perform. You have a procedure either in your mind or sketched out on a piece of paper. You sit there in your office, you look at it. Okay, I know the hazards. I know my worker. I know the procedure. So what possible way can my worker get hurt? Okay, so when this eventuality happens, if it ever happens, what do we do? Who's going to do what? Where are we going to look at? Right? Of course, nobody really does that because that is time consuming, right? Nobody has time for that in the real world, but that's what you're supposed to do, right? Prepare for investigation. So get the report if available. So here we got the preliminary report in this fake story based on the telling us of the basic sketch of the thing, right? So this is our preliminary report, right? This is our preliminary report here. Okay. Fine. Okay. Okay. Assemble the investigation kit. Okay. Yeah. So in Winnipeg, they had the backpack. Ensure availability of spare batteries, film, discs. Sure, right? This is just common sense. I mean, I've opened some first aid things, drawers, right? Of course, everything is all out, not in stock, right? So you don't want that to happen, right? Get the name of the person in charge of the scene, whoever that may be. It'll be different. Versus simple accident like this or an explosion or a death, right? There's going to be different people who's going to be in charge of that scene. So I think when something really, really bad happens in your workplace, like a base, I think the person in charge is going to be military police probably, right? So know your responsibilities and also know your limitations, okay? Your limitations in the sense of how far does my authority extend, right? Limitation in that sense, or how far does my knowledge of this thing extend, right? I don't want to be the one collecting the evidence if I don't know how to properly collect physical evidence. I don't want to be the ones to interview the witnesses at the get-go if I don't know how to interview witnesses. I don't want to be the one to be sketching out the event sequence if I have no idea what the objects are in this thing. I don't know what a tall boring machine is. I don't know what this thing is, blah, blah, blah. Right? So know your limitations and determine if media interest is likely, okay? So in your guidebook, right, they even give you recommendations on how to speak to the media, but probably in the real world, it's best not to say anything and leave it to, I think you have a certain trade. I think one of them, I've attended one of these courses before, like they're media people, right? So they're the ones who are trained on how to, I guess, speak vaguely about certain things so that they can always wiggle their way out of it if they, if they're being cornered by words, right? Things like this. So have a plan, visit and secure the scene, okay? So whenever you're visiting or securing the scene, the number one principle is that you want to prevent contamination of the scene. You want to prevent contamination of the scene so that you can collect evidence properly that will let you paint an accurate picture of what actually happened in this accident, okay? So control access. So ideally, you want one way in and one way out of the accident scene. You don't want people being able to access it at different points, because then, you don't know what they're doing. You don't know what they're taking. You don't know what they're disturbing, okay? Conduct a preliminary walkthrough. Prevent evidence from being disturbed. Note the positions of equipment, okay? I mean, here, they teach you. Note the positions either by photographs or sketches, things like this, right? They record the conditions, temperature, weather, lighting. Like, for example, this one, right? At least here they recorded, okay? I think it was sunny. No, this one, sunny. Is it sunny? Where is it? Or maybe they didn't record it. I think I read somewhere it was sunny. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, maybe not. Okay, all right. What else? Okay, take photos, sketches. So later on, they'll tell you or try to teach you on the proper ways of taking photos and making sketches. Well, I'm pretty sure none of you guys are going to be doing this in a fairly serious accident, okay? You probably need specialized people to be taking samples of fluids. But for something simple, like I want to say simple, but a broken hip, right? That you don't need like forensic level. So you're gonna take a sample of the fluid, maybe, of what this person might have tripped over. Fine. Document carefully any evidence removed from the scene. Approval may be required from regulatory or other investigative agencies. So, for example, from the labor code, I believe, either the labor code or the regulations, as a default, right? You are not supposed to disturb a serious accident scene, right? Unless you have permission from ESDC or Labor Canada, unless, right? And there are 3 conditions where you can technically disturb the scene that you don't necessarily need permission from Labor Canada. I believe it's to kind of like prevent further loss of life. And the other one is, I think, is to make sure public service is maintained. And I think the third one is to prevent more damage from occurring, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll see what that is later on. I think they give you the section where it talks about that, okay? And release the scene for cleanup and resumption of operation as possible, okay? So again, in the sense of having a plan, gather information, interview witnesses and injured party, determine the work procedures. This is key. Okay, this is a key to anything. Okay, you'll see this thing is key to the accident in Winnipeg that I'm gonna be talking about tomorrow, right? Because the 3 basic rights of any worker, either in the federal or the provincial level, is that the worker has a right to know, the worker has a right to participate, and the worker has a right to refuse unsafe and or dangerous work. And when it comes to the right to know, the worker has the right to know about their rights. So as soon as a civilian steps on your workplace, you have to let them know what those 3 basic rights are. And they have a right to know about hazards in their workplace. Put simply, right? You have a walkthrough with the new hire or the worker. That object, where you're using it, this is the hazard. This is the hazard. You're gonna get your fingers cut off. This is the hazard. You're gonna get hit by that forklift if you step into that area outside of these lines I've drawn for you. If you're not wearing your high-vis vest, they can't really see you. If they're focusing on something else, you might get hit. When you climb up this ladder here, You might fall off. That's a hazard. When you're working with this chemical, it's a fuel source. Okay? It's flammable. So any other ignition source that might be around you might ignite this. Okay, that's a hazard. Oh yeah, by the way, I asked you to grind that car paint. Okay, to scrape it off that vehicle. This is a hazard. You inhale it, isocyanate, you're gonna get a rash. You will develop respiratory problems, breathing problems over years of me asking you to do this. Oh, by the way, the car paint also has chromium-6. When you inhale enough of that, it's not a slam dunk that it's guaranteed, but you increase your likelihood of developing some sort of cancer later on in life. So I want you to use this respirator properly, shave the beard and all this stuff while you're scraping that green paint of that vehicle. So you walk around, right? So they have a right to know about their hazards, right? And they have a right to know how to do their work or their tasks properly to get the paint off the vehicle and also safely while they're doing it properly, right? So that's how, so in principle, right, you write the SOP because you've sat down as a supervisor, you've thought things through on how I'm going to train someone to do this job properly so I get the result that I want from the point of view of production, and then I'm going to write it also in such a way that I'm going to get what I want in the point of view of production while this person is safe while doing so. So in principle, any deviation that the worker does from your work procedure that is written out, yeah, then technically they potentially might be putting themselves in danger when they deviate from 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, all the steps in any work procedure. That's why it's very important to have an SOP, right? That's your standard or anchor on how to properly do something. And any deviation, basically, then you really didn't think things through because they deviated. So how did he get himself hurt doing this thing, right? So gather related documents, right? Training records, SOPs, equipment manuals, maintenance records, committee reports, hazard reports, sure. And review workplace inspection reports, right? So here, right? This assumes people are inspecting the workplace properly, right? I mean, I can show you the reports being submitted to me by the construction tunneling people, okay? Literally, some of their supervisors are just walking around checking off everything, check, and they're like, check, and you can spot it, right? Basically, one time they said scaffolds, yep, proper. It's like, wait a minute, where's the scaffold, right? So I go back to them. How come this part of the report, it said everything is okay but a scaffold? So point to me the object, scaffold, where is it? Because if there's a scaffold here, then we need to have a talk, right? We have to do certain things when it comes to scaffolding. Oh no, Alejandro, yeah. There's a misclick, or your supervisor's walking around clicking stuff, okay? Okay, or explosives, right? Click, wait a minute, you have explosives here? No, Alejandro, yeah, it's a misclick, okay, it's a misclick, okay? Because you're just doing things as a zombie, walking around, click. And literally, you can tell that. You can ask for inspection reports, and you can determine right away whether or not people are doing things in a meaningful way. For example, like SPDETs. You can ask for SPDET reports, right? I don't know if you know what a SPDET is. I think Dominic, Daniel Guerrero knows what SPDET reports are. You can tell right away whether or not someone knows what they're doing when they're doing the SPDET, right? All right, so develop a sequence of events. So we'll do that later on, right? The task activity being performed, right? So that's basically box number 4. Okay, so that's why to me, when I showed you guys, right, this intimately related to that. You cannot dismantle these two things. You got to know that, and you got to know that. Every primary task being done to objects in the real world. Okay? The nature of the work, equipment being used, special circumstances and events leading up to the occurrence, and identify the roles of the persons involved, right? What hat are they wearing while this thing happened? And you'll see tomorrow there are, I think, 7 workers involved. And basically under the roles in the report, they would put down not applicable, not applicable. I don't know what that means. What? Then why is he there? Why is he there? Why is he in the confined space if it's not applicable? Okay. All right. Analyze the accidents, identify active and latent failures, use a causation model. So basically for you guys, okay, the causation model that is being taught to you or being described in the in your yellow booklet, they call it the Venn diagram model, right? I mean, there are many different types of accident causation models. There's the domino theory, there's the Swiss cheese model, there's the behavioral factors model, right? Like the aircraft people, for example, anyone here from the Air Force or flight safety, they would know what the behavioral factors model is, right? There are systems approaches, right? And basically there's the Kaizen. Does anyone know what the Kaizen is? Right? The Kendi people use the Kaizen, right? There's the 5 whys, which is basically the Kaizen. And basically there's this Venn diagram that you guys use, okay? And basically here, determine the preventative measures, okay? Using your risk assessment, right? Is it going to be elimination, substitution, engineering solution, administrative solution, or PPE, right? Last alternative. And then basically complete the report, right? For example, here, does anyone know the principle that governs the risk assessment? What is the principle that governs this? Does anyone know? Why is the hierarchy arranged the way it is? What governs that? So let me ask you a question, okay? Before we go on break. Notice I'm not harping. I'm not saying that the PPE is the worst solution, right? It's a bad solution. Here's my question. Why is the PPE the worst solution as your first solution?
Should be your last line of defense.
Well, why is that? Why?
Because if you needed something went wrong.
Okay, so let me explain to you in the real world why that is, right? When you hand someone a PPE, you're fundamentally relying on 3 things. Does anyone know what those 3 things you're relying on as a supervisor when you're handing someone a PPE? 1, you're relying that they're going to use it, right? 2, you're going to rely that they're going to use it properly. Those are 2 very different things, right? Someone wearing the earphone, right? Yeah, they're wearing it. I can see pink coming out of their ears, but are they wearing it properly, right? There's a proper way to wear the earphones, right? Okay, go like this, you stick it in, you wait supposedly 10 seconds while your head is tilted for it to expand to fill the cavity, and then you carry on, okay? But nobody does that in the candy factory. You just go like this and away they go, okay? So you're relying on that they use it, you're relying on that they use it properly, and lastly, you're relying that they use it properly all the time, especially when you as a supervisor are not looking. Okay, so now that means when you hand someone a PPE, you are at the mercy of individual human behavior. That's why the PPE is a poor solution as your first solution, because individual human behavior is highly variable, right? You're at the mercy, okay? That whether or not they're going to listen to you or not listen to you, okay? Blah, blah, blah. Right, so now, if your safety culture is high in your workplace, the property of the objects, right? The people that work for you, they're rules followers, right? They'll follow the rules. Whenever you tell them, they'll follow it, right? Even when you're not looking, then great. Yeah, the PPE is a good solution as the first solution because they're inherently rules follower type people, okay? But if your safety culture in your workplace is poor or mediocre, then you're in danger, okay? If your PPE is your first solution as your first solution, right? And that people are not going to wear this properly, especially when you're not looking, okay? Then they actually are in danger. So that's why people want to go higher in the hierarchy, like elimination and substitution, because these 2 solutions are less dependent or not dependent at all to individual human behavior. That's what makes them so good. But employers shy away from the top 2 because it costs money, right? Whenever you're eliminating something or substituting something for something else, that's going to cost money or resources. So employers are going to shy away from that, okay? And below that is the engineering control. So this is a hybrid, right? So in the engineering control, like machine guarding, right? Interlock guards, right? Great solution. It's not dependent on the individual human behavior. For example, does anyone know what an interlock guard is? So you have a moving press. You have an interlock guard, a door, right? And then in the door, there's a magnet. When you open the door, what happens to the moving press? It stops, right? So it's in. It doesn't really matter anymore what the guy is doing, right? Because now, as soon as he opens that door, the moving part stops. He's not in any danger. He has no access to that moving part. Okay, but of course, right? So it's an engineered solution, not dependent on human behavior at all. But it partly depends on human behavior when it comes to inspections. So now people have to properly inspect whether or not the interlock guards are still functioning properly. So that's why the engine control is in the middle. It's kind of like half-half. Okay, good solution because it's less dependent on human behavior, but it's dependent in the sense that you have to now do inspections properly on guard railing, machine guarding, ventilation, the fan speed, etc., etc., etc. Right? Below that is administrative control, right? Bunch of rules, policies, emergency rescue plans, right? Absolutely also slave to individual human behavior, right? Because people can choose whether or not they're going to follow any of this stuff. Okay, so that's why it's lower in the hierarchy up until the PPE, right? You give someone, right? So that's how why the hierarchy sits the way it sits. Okay, it's all a function on human behavior. All right. So with that said, I think it's a good place to break. Oh yeah. All right, let's break there. Let's do 10 minutes. Let's all come back at 10:05. Okay, 10:05. All right, let's continue on. All right, so prepare for the investigation. Once you have been assigned to investigate a hazardous occurrence, notice, right, remember, before you start assigning people to investigate, they must meet the definition of a qualified person, right? So knowledge, training, and experience, okay? That's in the definition of the coach phrase. Ensure that you are clear on what you have been asked to investigate, right? Of course, you want people investigating things who have technical understanding of the stuff being investigated, right? For a slip, trip, or fall, like in this scenario here, most people would suffice. That, yeah, you can go ahead and investigate this thing. But if it involves some sort of technical equipment or things like this, you better pick properly which people you're going to assign to investigate this thing, okay? Or at least have a team, someone with the technical understanding of the equipment plus another person who knows kind of like the world on paper stuff about the stuff, or the person just knows the world of paper stuff and they can talk to someone with a technical understanding as an indirect witness about whatever it is that occurred. Okay? In the case of a serious occurrence, a formal memo assigning you to the investigation and outlining your duties and responsibilities should be prepared. So you can see this in your hazardous occurrence investigators guide Annex A, right? Memo. Okay, let's see. Let me open up that guide. Guide. Let's see. Where's the guide? Where's this memo? Annex A. Annex A. There it is. There's the guide. Okay. Okay. Now, again, this is me, Alejandro, very cynical, right? Cynical. Like these days, I don't know, I've met more and more people that literally, they need a template, right? So this kind of thing absolutely defeats them, right? So to me, this is at least in my opinion, a giant problem, right? So for example, here, let me show you what defeats most people, okay? Being cynical now. Okay? This is what defeats most people. Let me show you. Am I freezing here? What's going on? I need a better computer. This thing's too old. Okay. There. This thing, the blinking cursor, defeats many people that I've met. Okay. Always remember, always retain or have the ability to put your thoughts on paper in a very methodical, organized way. Never lose that skill, right? Or else, then yeah, what people are going to do is basically they need a template for them to even begin to do something, and all it becomes is that, oh yeah, let me just fill in the blanks here, and then away it goes. Okay, and this is basically what this template is. Okay, it's memo authorized by da 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 da. Okay, so my kind of like advice is never lose the ability to be able to put your thoughts on a piece of paper in a very methodical way. Okay, fine. Gather as much information as available prior to visiting the scene. Sure. Should collateral investigations be underway, identify who is in charge of them. Fine. Okay. So, for example, as I've said yesterday, if the accident falls in the jurisdiction of a specialized safety program, then yeah, you don't have to be redundant in investigating it. You wait for the outcome and then ask it from them and fill in your D&D Form 663 to fulfill the requirements of the General Safety Program. Okay, and then the only caveat is make sure you're careful on what you put on your 663, because that becomes public information when you submit it to Labor Canada through a request through FOIA. Okay, so remember that other investigations may take priority over yours, so you got to figure out where on the stack you are. Cooperation is the key. Ensure that the materials and equipment you may need in investigating the accident are ready and sufficient to do the job. Okay, here are some examples. By no means an exhaustive list of the investigator's kit. Okay, so take this list as a template. Okay, circle which ones you think you need, and then ignore the rest. Okay, or if something here is missing, yeah, extend the list and figure out what you need depending on your workplace. Right. So something, for example, if you work in a kitchen, your investigator's kit might be different than if your unit is a machine shop, or it might be different if your unit is an office space. Might be different if your unit is deals with ammunition or explosives. Might be different if it deals with radiation, things like this, or vehicles, right? Tools. And some tools are just very general, that they should be in every investigator's kit. Okay? That's the idea. Okay. Yep. So more things. Okay. Sure. That again, all this stuff is all listed in that yellow booklet. Confidentiality of information. Remember that in the course of your investigation, you will be collecting information that may be sensitive or privileged in nature. It is your responsibility to ensure that this information is only passed to those who have a need to know. Okay, so then this assumes you know what information is privileged or sensitive and what is not, right? So for example, for me, I can only guess, right? But if you show me information I can't tell whether that's sensitive or privileged. So I don't know who teaches you and how you're taught and what is sensitive information and what is not sensitive information, right? I don't know how to delineate that, but maybe you know. So it's up to you to figure this out or ask someone who knows the differences between sensitive or privileged, or they'll just tell you, nope, that one you can't put down a D&D Form 63. That one you can't, that one you can. Then my first question is, well, how do you know? Like, how are you determining which ones are what? Like, what type of documents that you're reading that lets you know which ones are what, right? So that's how you kind of like move through the space to figure out how it works, right? Also recognize that not all personnel have a need to know all parts of the information, right? So this is a property of the object, right? So what is it about them? Is it their rank? Is it their position, their trade, right? That they don't need to know this thing. Okay. For example, I was in Rocky Point Ammunition Depot, right? So basically, a couple of people there expressed concern when I interviewed them because they were being exposed to what's called auto fuel, right? And they want to know specifically what is in auto fuel, okay? Things like this. All right. Yeah, know your limitations. It is important to recognize when additional help is required, and specialist advisors are available at most D&D and CAP sites in the fields of this. I think some of you guys are engineers here, right? I think someone mentioned they're a combat engineer. Medicine, photography, security, all right? So don't be afraid to call on them for assistance. Yeah, sure. If you don't know, I mean, there's no problem asking for help, right? Okay, because not everyone, people can call themselves subject matter expert. Like Alejandro is not a subject matter expert in anything. Okay, so I have a lot of blind spots. So if I don't know something, I know my limitation, then I'm gonna talk to whoever wants to talk to me, and is willing to teach me about certain things. But if they don't want to teach me, then great. Okay, so maybe I can offer them something. Oh, but can I teach you about this? And in exchange, can you teach me about this thing? Okay, sure, let's do that. Okay, then away you go. Can I buy you a beer? Okay, can I do this? Okay, and you teach me this stuff. Okay. So additionally, it is important to recognize when an occurrence is not yours to investigate. Early on, it may become apparent that an event should be handled under another safety program, right? Like this. Where is it? Where's that box? This box. Okay, that's the other safety programs. Okay. It's a personnel or disciplinary issue again. Okay. Hint, hint. Might be on the exam. Your hazardous occurrence investigation program underneath the D&D in your general safety program is not meant to be used for disciplinary things. It is meant in principle or as a philosophy to figure out what went wrong. Okay. But if disciplinary is called for, then yeah, then you discipline. But that is not the intent when you start, or maybe the result of a criminal act. Okay, so this thing basically will fall under the criminal code. Should this occur, immediately seek guidance from the office that tasks you to investigate. Media involvement, depending on the nature of the occurrence, there may be interest from the media. In most cases, they will want to talk to the investigator. However, it should be remembered that contact with the media should be cleared through the local chain of command. That only makes sense. Okay? Therefore, before accepting a media interview, contact should be made with this type of person in authority and or guidance received. Okay? Because they have certain trainings, I guess, to be able to follow certain words, questions when they're being asked, right? They can follow the abstraction and answer it accordingly, okay, in a proper way. Okay. So if you are faced with a reporter at the scene and cannot contact the PAO, the guidelines found in Hazardous Occurrence Investigators Guide may be of assistance. Yeah, they tell you certain kind of like recommendations on how to answer, but in the real world, probably best not to answer anything. No. Any questions on that? All right. There's no questions. Let's move on. Okay, so visiting and securing the scene. Remember that you may not be in charge of the scene of this hazardous occurrence. Identify yourself and your reason for being there to the person in charge, okay? So this is all about manners, okay? So whenever you're meeting someone for the first time, right? You introduce yourself and basically let them know, right? Nobody likes surprises, especially when there's bad stuff happening. So, and why you're there, okay? And what your role is. This assumes you know why you're there and what your role is. I mean, you guys have been put in this course. And through the introductions, you don't even know why you're here, right? You can only presume, oh yeah, they might make me investigate something, right? So when you're actually arriving on the scene, know why you're there, and then introduce that to the person in charge. In a serious accident, you may not be allowed to work the scene until others have finished. Correct, right? So for example, most of the time in a serious accident, you guys are not the ones who's going to be collecting the primary data, right? So there really should be a course on accident investigation on how to handle secondary evidence, tertiary evidence, right? Does anyone know what the difference is between primary evidence and secondary evidence? What is primary evidence? What is primary? So for example, when I read this, right? The person, here, this one, right? The person who wrote this stuff, did they collect primary evidence, yes or no? Did the person who wrote this stuff collect primary evidence? Yes or no? Yes. These are the people who were there, who's collecting the data in the investigation. Alejandro and the rest of you guys reading this thing, we are looking at secondary evidence now, okay? And we're assuming that the collection of this stuff, the description, is accurate, right? So you gotta make sure that when someone is presenting you with their findings and you're making conclusions based on those findings, that is not primary evidence anymore. That is secondary, based on someone else's interpretation of what they collected on that day or on that series of days, right? So there are certain things that you have to keep in mind when you're looking, right, at secondary stuff. The default setting is this: how do I know that this is true, right? So when you're looking at stuff as a secondary thing or tertiary, right, you always have to be skeptical. Is this true? How do I know that this is true? What this person telling me that this thing is true? What are they presenting to me to show me that this is in fact true? Okay, so that's the thing that you have to be at a default in your mind. Skepticism when someone is feeding you supposed facts because they collected it, right? That's the idea, right? So should you be first on the scene and/or is an occurrence over which you are the lead investigator, the first action to take is to secure the scene so evidence is not disturbed, removed, or repaired until authorized to do so. Fine, right? So material evidence has a tendency to walk off after an accident. Okay? If the occurrence is quite serious, Employment Social Development Canada, and notice, fairly old slide, they now have changed their name. They're now called Head of Compliance and Enforcement, okay? May require that all material evidence be marked and remain at the scene. Not disturbing the scene may include covering or removing material that may be lost due to environmental conditions. Again, this is very generic, okay? So you just gotta make sure that when you're preventing things from disappearing, you're not also at the same time contaminating that evidence, right? Document the scene with photographs, videotape, or sketches in appropriate measurements. Fine. Right, so these are some actions to secure the scene. Assess and control residual hazards before proceeding. Carry out essential protective actions per this. So let's look at this. Right, so section 127.1. So if you go to the Canada Labor Code, okay, section 127. Okay, this is where it actually tells you do not disturb. You do not have the authority to disturb a scene. All right, 127. Okay, here, all right? Interference at accident scenes is prohibited, okay? So again, notice the mechanics. Subject to subsection 2, that's a context type phrasing, right? So subject to subsection 2, if an employee is killed or seriously injured in a workplace, no person shall, there's a pivot word, right? So as a default, don't disturb unless you are authorized to do so by the head, right? Head of enforcement and compliance. Remove or in any way interfere with or disturb any wreckage, article, or thing related to the incident except to the extent necessary, right? Here, Pivot word, right? So double negative meaning you can do this, okay? Except, right? To save a life, prevent injury or relieve human suffering, maintain an essential public service, or prevent unnecessary damage, right? So default setting, don't disturb. Unless you're authorized to do so by the minister. Go ahead, we give you permission to disturb. So without that permission, right? So the default setting is don't disturb unless there's no permission, but unless these conditions are present, A or B or C, then yeah, you can go ahead and save that dude. You can go ahead and put out that fire. You can go ahead and remove this wreckage to maintain an essential public service down this road, etc., 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 right? And notice this thing, right? Before you do any of this thing, it's subject to subsection 2. So do this first and then do this, right? So no authorization referred to in 1 is required where an employee is killed or seriously injured by an accident or incident involving A or B, right? So if any of these things happen, A or B, then yeah, you don't need any sort of authorization from the Ministry of Labor, ESDC, to be able to do whatever you need to do, right? So here you see that these acts, the Aeronautics Act, the Canada Shipping Act, and the Canadian Transportation Accident Investigation and Safety Board Act supersedes Labor Canada, okay? So if any of this thing is involved, then yeah, you don't need to wait for their permission. You can go do what you need to do. Or a motor vehicle on a public highway, right? In some places, let's say it's the RCMP. I don't know if it's the RCMP or whatever. So let's say your DND civilian is driving down the road, right? And basically, yeah, they get into an accident. You don't need to wait for the minister to be able to do what you need to do. Basically, it's not yours anyway. It's going to be the police that's going to handle that on a public highway, whether it's municipal or like RCMP, depending on if you're in British Columbia or whatever, right? They handle such things. Okay, so that's the idea behind that. Define a safe perimeter, control access inside the perimeter, suspend adjacent activities if necessary, control traffic, demarcate the scene. All this stuff is all about contamination. It's all about preserving evidence, okay? Because preserving evidence lets you paint an accurate picture during the event sequencing stage, okay? During that stage right there, okay? That's what you're after, right? So all this stuff that's being discussed right now, you're just after this thing. You gotta put this thing in box 4, and you gotta get it right, okay? Okay. So identify, detain, document, and separate Isaac witnesses. We'll talk about that later on. Order non-disturbance of the evidence. Excuse non-essential personnel from the scene. So this assumes, right? You know who is essential and who's not essential. You know what roles people play. You know if they are a relevant person, they can give you information based on what happened, right? Yeah. Take photographs. Do nothing to contaminate the scene, right? Things like that. So, for example, right, if you're haphazard, right, and you're smoking, and basically you're just leaving your your cigarette butts in different places in the scene, and now this involves some sort of a fire, right? They're trying to determine the fire triangle, what caused the thing. And yeah, this thing, they might think your cigarette butt. They might think the construction workers were smoking, and why this thing ignited inside the tunnel, right? So every time I walk into the tunnel, the first thing I look for are cigarette butts, right? So in this tunnel job that I'm doing, super clean. Okay, so that tells me, oh, okay, they're not smoking, maybe, or maybe they've gotten so smart that they start putting their cigarette butts in a specific container, not on the floor, and they're still smoking, right? So I'm looking for this container. I'm looking for signs of smoking and things like this, because we did a job in a different tunneling thing where workers were actually smoking in front of the tunnel boring machine, and something ignited. Okay, so I already talked about that. Okay. Yeah, basically subsection 2. So no authorization referred to in subsection 1 is needed when you got to do all this stuff. Okay, so always remember, figure out what your jurisdiction is. Okay, and you can only figure that out from reading the rolled on paper, like that. Okay. Okay. Yeah. If you need specialist assistance, because not everyone is going to be a subject matter expert on everything. So at some point, your knowledge is going to hit a wall. So when it hits a wall, then yeah, ask for specialist assistance. Military police, base fire department, PMed techs, health and safety specialists, engineers, medical professionals, you name it, figure it out. Okay, so hazards to control, right? Live electrical. So for example, what's the #1 rule in the electrical hazard club? Does anyone know? Here I'm skipping into the hazard identification component, right? Because you as an investigator, you as a health and safety person, or UGSO, you gotta know about the nature of hazards. And what is the #1 rule in the electrical club? What are 2 ways that electricity will harm you? And there really is only 2 ways electricity will harm you. What are they? Does anyone know? Anyone want to make a guess? Okay. Give me 2 parameters of electricity. There's voltage and there's amperes, right? So what technically kills you? Is it the voltage or is it the ampere? Anyone? Are people still here? Am I just now speaking into the ether?
Voltage?
No. Voltage just measures potential. It's the amperes, the movement of the electrons, right? The current is what's going to kill you, right? The current, okay? So now we're moving electrons. So what do electrons need for it to move? What do you need to complete? What do you always need to complete for electrons to move? We're going to say potential gradient, essentially. A circuit. Whoever said that, right? Okay. You always need to complete a circuit, right? So now you can complete the circuit in the intended path of the electrons, or you can complete the circuit in the unintended path. What would be the unintended path? The ground, right? To the ground. Now, so the #1 rule in the electrical club is do not be part of the circuit, either the intentional route or the unintentional route, right? Literally, you can deduce all the different protection measures put in place that prevents you from being part of the circuit, right? So that's why that's why in a cherry picker, right? The thing is probably made of fiberglass or some sort of plastic thing or rubberized thing, right? That's what the shoes are for, that's what the gloves are for, right? So these are resistors, right? So it doesn't conduct electricity because they don't want you to be part of the circuit. And your body is filled with ions. And what are ions in your body, right? You're basically a bag of water, right? Lots of ions. Well, yeah, that can conduct electricity. So this electricity will choose you, okay, to get to the ground. So that's the idea, okay? So that's the #1 rule. Do not be part of the circuit. And the other thing that will kill you when it comes to electricity, I don't know if you play video games. I grew up playing video games, right? Street Fighter, the Hadouken, right? Fireball to the face. So how do you receive a fireball to the face when you are dealing with electricity? How does it happen? What's the proper term for the fireball?
Arcing.
Arcing, okay? So that's why you engage in what's called an arc flash assessment. So basically, you have a live conductor, technically not touching, okay? And basically, what happens is if the voltage is high enough, right? Imagine voltage as pressure, right? Pushing on the electrons to get it to move, right? You have this pressure gradient, okay? But air is a poor conductor of electricity. But if the voltage is high enough, it'll push. So the electricity actually will go right through the air into the other conductor, right? It's like a spooky action at a distance. It goes like that. And when it does that, that's the arc. And that arc has a lot of energy, right? So that's a fireball to the face. And basically, I mean, I've done arc flash assessments, right? That you determine the joules, the energy of the arc, depending on different parameters about the voltage and all that stuff. And then you have an arc flash boundary, right? Because it moves in this front, it goes like this, right? And basically then that will determine what you're wearing, right? Cotton overalls or an outright moon suit, based on the energy of the arc. That's the idea. Right? So again, in any hazard, I know this is not a hazard identification type course, but you cannot avoid the topic in an accident investigation, right? It's all related, right? They're all spill into one another, right? Structural hazards, okay? Concept, okay? You have stuff holding up other stuff. So basically, it's just load. So you gotta know that the stuff you're entering into can support the load above it, right? Okay, so you don't get crushed, right? So basically, in a tunnel, right? This thing that you've dug itself can support the load above it, okay? Or you're gonna put some engineered things to help it support the stuff above it, right? For example, about 3 or 4 months ago, I was in Goldrich, Ontario. Okay, so in Goldrich, Ontario, it's right beside Lake Huron. And basically, what's so special about underneath Lake Huron? Does anyone know? Has anyone ever been to Goldrich, Ontario? There's a giant salt mine, right? So I went inside that salt mine. They're not. It's not table salt. It's road salt, right? Biggest road salt mine in the world, right? So we went down there because people were concerned about certain dust in the salt mine, and we were there to sample the dust. And literally, that thing is deep. Like imagine the CN Tower. It's that deep underground, and literally, it's all salt. And they just use this kind of like equipment where imagine like a roller with spikes on it, and all it does is scrapes the salt right off the wall. All the walls are salt, right? Right? And basically, yeah, they have engineers there, right, to make sure strategically what walls they're going to grind, because then they can destabilize the mine, right? Because you have all this other stuff above it, like Lake Huron, right? Above the salt mine, right? Okay. So live machinery, right? So the number one rule in the machine guarding club is that no worker shall have access to a moving part, right? So you see a machine, okay, let's operate it. What parts are moving? Okay, we got to guard that, right? We got to lock that up. So that's why machine guarding and lockout tagout always travel together, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're working with a machine and you need to fix it or repair it or troubleshoot it, well, guess what? You're going to have to defeat the guards to protect you from the moving parts, because you have to repair the moving part. So that then means you have to layer on lockout tagout to prevent the machine from starting while your hands are in there. So then with lockout tagout, you still meet the regulation that no worker shall have access to a moving part, right? Right. So hazardous atmospheres, there are too many to name, right? This is what your WMIS is supposed to be training you on, to understand fundamentally gases and vapors, what makes them harmful, what makes them toxic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Same with chemicals. I think we have a couple of hazmat people here who should be really, really well trained in understanding the role of chemicals. And to understand the role of chemicals, all you're doing is understanding the movement of electrons. Okay, that's all it is. And of course, traffic hazards. Okay, basically these are struck by object, struck by vehicle. Right? It's just objects, big objects moving that could potentially hit other objects, okay? In the tunnel, right? Limited space, lots of equipment, right? Okay. Objects hitting other objects, right? So potential actions to render the scene safe. Yeah, lockout, tagout, de-energize, and tag the equipment. Shut down and lock out any equipment appearing to be involved in an incident or potentially presenting a hazard during the investigation. Close and secure any involved in the incident or potentially presenting a hazard during the investigation. And again, perform atmospheric testing if necessary. So this assumes people know how to use any of these testing equipment, right? So sometimes, notice when you pick up any of these kind of like gas monitors, sometimes other gases might interfere with the reading, right? You got to know. You got to know exactly how those monitors work, right? What is being ionized, right? And how it's being converted to voltage, how you're measuring the actual concentration in the air, right? Things like that. What would interfere with the actual proper reading of this thing? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, but that's just too many details to actually teach you today. Okay? So questions on that? All right, moving on. Okay, or in this case, okay, fine. Supposedly, we arrived on the scene of that slip and fall of that administrative 53-year-old female. Okay, okay. Now this is what we see. Okay, equipment to bring. Okay, so here. Okay, so initial actions when the scene is secure. So, for example, let me walk you through what you're supposed to do in an administrative way. So when someone gets hurt in your workplace, so what I'm describing for you is what's written technically in your role on paper, right? Now the local practice might be different depending on what base or wing you're in, but this is what's written in the role on paper. So when you arrive on the scene, okay, you're supposed to take care of the injured person first. So whatever that entails, you take care of it first, okay? And once that happens, the supervisor, right? So you have to notify the supervisor right away. Okay, so unless it's a supervisor who actually witnessed this thing or arrived on the scene, but if it's not the supervisor, you notify the supervisor right away. And what is the supervisor supposed to do right away in the role on paper? What are they supposed to do? What is the supervisor supposed to do? Does anyone know? The supervisor must investigate right away or assign someone to investigate right away, right? That's what we're supposed to do, okay? So you're going to be assigning a qualified person, okay? And then you're going to be notifying the health and safety rep or the health and safety committee because you have to give them the opportunity, the right to participate to the investigation, right? That's what you're supposed to do, okay? So now you go ahead and you investigate, okay? So now in your mind as a supervisor, you go down kosher 15.5, okay? Kosher, let's say 15.5. Okay, 15.5. Are any of these triggers true for this administrative worker? We don't know, right? Okay, what is permanent impairment of a body function? Well, it's a hairline fracture. Well, that's probably not permanent impairment. There's no explosion. There's no damage to a boiler or pressure vessel. Maybe, right? Now we don't know. You'll see later on. There's some sort of leak. Okay, right. So now maybe if this is true, then yeah. If you believe that this is true, then yeah, you make a call to Labor Canada within 24 hours of finding it out. So let's say this is not true. 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 She didn't die, and there's only one of her. So you don't need to make a call to Labor Canada, right? External reporting requirement. Then you go down to 15.8. All right. Okay. So here we know that at least A is true. Okay, that she didn't fall because she didn't collapse because there was something toxic in the atmosphere, right? Okay, so this is true. So what's going to happen is that you're going to notify the committee to give them the right to participate. You're going to investigate and you're going to prepare a written report. So you have two internal reporting requirements. So the written report is going to be given to the Health and Safety Committee. Okay. And the written report is going to be given to Labor Canada within 14 days, I believe. Okay, so that's the idea. So that is your external and internal reporting requirements. Okay, so there's another set of external reporting requirements. So for example, the federal government has a deal with the provincial workplace compensation agencies. So I don't know what the nature of that is in New Brunswick, right? What the actual time limit is. At least in Ontario, we call it Form 6, 7, or 8. Okay, one is the worker report, one is the employer's report, and one is the doctor's report. Okay, so let's pretend that this person got hurt as a civilian. Then you need to notify that this is a workplace injury to the compensation agency, and they're going to be expecting. They're already going to get the doctor's report. They're going to expect the employer's report, and they're going to also expect the workers' report. Okay, and then from the internal side in your organization, then unfortunately, I don't know that off the top of my head where it goes in the chain of command, how high it goes. All these D&D form 663s. Right. So the only acceptable form to Labor Canada is the 663. Okay, so you might as well give that to your workplace health and safety committee as well. Okay, so those are the sequence of events. Okay, and then once you have the investigation, right, you put down the sequence of events, you identify the causes. Okay, based on the causes you've identified from the sequence, then you make recommended actions or solutions to your employer or your commander. Now it's up to them whether they say yay or nay. Do I accept or reject, or I accept with modifications? And then you get a whole bunch of people to sign it. Who needs to sign it? I think the supervisor is one, the witnesses, I think the UGSO, and then the commanding officer or senior civilian manager. So whoever needs to sign it, and basically then communicate lessons learned. Right? So that's basically the sequence of events. Right? Okay, so yeah, take extensive photos, identify all the stuff. So this is basically data gathering. Okay, on the scene, right? Data gathering. Okay, on the scene. Okay, data gathering on the scene. Okay, data gathering. So basically, I'll explain. Oh, wait a minute. They're already trying to teach you here on how to properly photograph. Okay, just a second here. So without going through the slides, give me some good practices when you're taking photographs of an accident scene or for an inspection or for anything really of a workplace. What are good ways to photograph and record keep?
Use a measurement guideline, either a ruler or something to help you identify the size of it.
Sure. Okay. Fine. Okay. Let me address that momentarily. Okay. So when let's say I have a ruler, right, and I'm taking a photograph. What's the problem if I take the photograph? I'm not saying this is what you're suggesting, right? I'm just speculating now, right? I'm just trying to make a point, right? You're taking a photograph, I'm holding the ruler, and I'm measuring something. What's the problem when you do it that way? I hold the ruler, I have my camera, I'm aiming at the object I'm trying to measure, and I take a photo. Yep, that's the measurement. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is 5 centimeters high. What's the problem? Why can't you do it that way?
Depth.
Depth, right? Depth, okay? They're not on the same plane, right? So this principle is also very important, right? Because I've seen people, they kind of put the measurement tool kind of in the area of the actual object, right? So they're not doing the crazy stuff where you're going like this, okay? They're not doing that, right? It's very obvious, but they think when they place the measurement tool just kind of in the vicinity of the object they're measuring, yeah, you can get an estimate, but if you need to be precise, that's not the way to do it, simply because you have to be on the exact plane of the actual dimension of the object that you're measuring and your measuring tool, right? Everything has to be on the same plane. If that thing is tilted slightly or greatly, then the measurement is going to be off, right? The angle, the depth. Okay, that's the thing, right? So whenever you're putting a measurement tool, a better way to do it is that take a picture, right? Yeah, put your measuring tool there, or just measure it, right? And then just record that in your log. Oh, by the way, I measured it, right? I mean, you're only taking a picture of your measurement tool so that you can show people what you use to measure the distance of this thing, right? And things like that. And basically, if the measurement is important, right? Does your error, is your chance for error get bigger the smaller the measurement or the bigger the measurement? Does the error get bigger the smaller the measurement or the bigger the measurement that you're measuring? For example, if you're measuring, no, the smaller, right? Because you take a percentage. For example, if what you're measuring is a table, okay, right? Maybe it's like a 1.5 or 2 meters, right? Yeah, you can be off by a couple of centimeters. It's negligible. But if what you're measuring with your measuring tool is like in the centimeter range, if what you're measuring is kind of like a little tiny, I don't know, a screw or nut that's important, right? Then yeah, if you're going to be off by a certain amount based on the resolution of your tool, then that's a giant percentage of the actual overall dimension of that small thing that you're measuring, right? So always remember that the finer or the smaller what you're measuring, the finer the tool that you need to use, right? Then at that point, instead of you using a ruler to measure the dimensions of a screw that might be important, you might be using something finer. What is a finer tool to use when you're measuring small things? What is it called?
Micrometers.
Usually calipers, right? That's the term, right? Caliper. Just Google what a caliper is, right? It's very fine. It knows how small these things are, right? Okay, so just remember that when you're measuring stuff. Also, when you're taking photographs, okay, the recommendation is this, okay, that one recommendation is that don't walk into a scene and just start randomly taking pictures of stuff, okay? So don't do that, okay? You have to be methodical, right? And many different ways of being methodical. Some people recommend that you do the perimeter, right? You just go from the outside and then you circle in, right? Methodical, you're walking through. Or some people can do it raster way. What is raster? It's kind of like the old TVs, right? The cathode ray tube TVs, right? Raster. You're going like this, right? Methodical. Okay? So you know, oh yeah, I walked through the scene in a certain way, and that's a sequence of my photos here. Okay? And also when you're taking a photograph, it's probably better to take a far view, right? Because you always need context for anything. Context for photographs, context for words, like when you're describing something, context, right? So far shot, medium, and then up close. So you know exactly what it is that you're looking at, okay? So of course, I say this, I teach this, but to me, Alejandro, I regularly break my own rules, okay? Because in the real world, this is nice to say in the world on paper, in the world of teaching, but in the real world, I break my own rules because whenever I go into the tunnel, right? Whenever I go into the tunnel, they have to stop work, okay? So they hate me going into the tunnel because they really have to stop while I look around, take photographs, make sketches. I don't even make a sketch, right? Because I only have a specific amount of time, like at most an hour or an hour and a half in the tunnel. And they want me out of there because they gotta get back to work, right? So there's no time really to do all this thing. So I have to pick my spots and what I'm actually interested in taking. Right? So basically, always remember that. So if you are constrained by the real world to properly take photographs in the proper way, then at least know the weaknesses when you take your photographs. Okay, that you're not taking a proper perspective, and you'll see tomorrow in the report, they took horrible pictures, right? Horrible pictures. Okay. Okay. So another thing about taking pictures is that you have to log, right? Sample photo log. Okay. All right. So the idea here is that it's time consuming. So imagine I'm going into the tunnel. I'm telling those guys to wait. I'm going to take a photograph of this. I have my clipboard. I'm going to note where I am, log the date, what I'm looking at, what the image number is, and then that's time consuming, right? So I always tell them, oh yeah, as soon as I get back into the office, I'm gonna go through my photographs and I'm going to log, right? But of course, right, even I know that about myself. I go, oh yeah, you know, I'll remember, and then I just let it sit. And then basically I went on a Monday, I don't get around to it until Thursday, and I'm basically scrolling through my photographs without perspective, without distance. It's just pictures. I don't even know where I am in the tunnel, where I took that stuff, because you lose all directions where you're in the tunnel, right? Okay, and there's no signal, right? If you want to use some sort of like compass or whatever, right? Sometimes there's no signal, so I don't even know where I am, right? So this is the thing that you're supposed to keep in mind when you're taking photographs, okay? That you're documenting everything. Okay? The camera shows the view as seen by a witness and can record documents. Digital cameras and cameras that process their own film are ideal for this application. Okay, again, advantage, you can take so many pictures now. Disadvantage, yeah, because you can take so many pictures, you might start just taking pictures haphazardly, and then when you have to review these pictures, you forget, where the hell was I? Why do I have so many pictures? Okay? All photos should be recorded in a photo log at the time of shooting to allow for the organization and to remind you what you were trying to document with the photo. Okay? The log should include notes that identify what the photo was intended to show. If the camera has the capability to record the time and date on the image, this feature should be used. So at least I found an app in my iPhone, right, that will let me timestamp whenever I take a picture, right? So that helps me out. Care must be taken to ensure that all pertinent areas of the scene are recorded and that photographic evidence is carefully documented, right? So that's why for people generally who are not used to looking at whenever they enter, especially when you don't know the space, they get overwhelmed by information. Look at all these objects. I don't know what they are, right? And then basically the default setting of people being overwhelmed about the stuff that they're looking at, you're just gonna keep taking pictures, right? In the hopes that, yeah, I don't want to miss anything, so I'm just gonna keep taking pictures. And later on, oh, thank God, I took that thing because I did not have in my mind that that thing is relevant. Okay, but good thing I took so many pictures that I see it here now. Okay, then now I can say something about that thing now. Okay, so this is the idea. That's why it's always good to have a plan. It's always good to know something technical about the thing you're looking at so that you can plan ahead what might be relevant things to be taking pictures of. Okay, or if you want to take pictures of everything, yeah, at least you want to know the key relevant ones. Take pictures of those first, and then just in case, you just take a whole bunch of pictures because you might miss something, right? So that's the idea. Okay? That's a sample photo log sheet. Okay? I mean, you can find any sample or templates you want on the internet. Okay? So take extensive photos as long as it's methodical. Okay, that you know exactly the catalog of the pictures you're taking. Your imaging units may be called upon. If specialized photography is warranted, right? Maybe sometimes if you need a really close up picture, right? The lens in your camera might not be good enough if you have to put it really, really close to what it is you're trying to photograph. So you need a special lens, like a macro lens, okay? That they bend light a certain way, that the focal plane is not so far, so that the thing focuses. It's really, really tiny like this, okay? So still photos are critical because they can be enlarged, zoomed in on, etc. Videos may also be taken to supplement. Okay, fine. Okay, so now, what would be a kind of like a disadvantage? So for some people, instead of taking photographs, I'll just video everything, right? Then I really will not miss anything. So what is one potential weakness if you decide instead of taking still photographs, you just kind of record everything, and then because you're recording everything, when you're interested in something, you're gonna freeze the frame, take a snapshot or a screenshot, and then use that as your still photograph. What's the problem there? What is one potential problem? One is the technology, right? So the video usually are lower quality, okay? Then you might not get as good of a resolution from the video as if it was a still photograph. Two, let's say we solve the technical problem of resolution. You have high resolution videos that literally any still that you screenshot from the video is as good as a still photograph. Fundamentally, when someone's taking a video, what's the weakness versus someone who's taking photographs? So someone who's taking photographs, right? When they're walking around, in their mind, there's a subject, right, that they intend to take. Okay, click, click, click. Sometimes, some people who are taking video, right, because it's recording in real time, so they don't really have a specific subject matter in their mind. So what they would probably do is swing the video around to capture as much of the scene as possible. Okay, so this might be a weakness, depending on how fast they're moving the camera, because they really are trying to capture everything, because they don't have this specific thing, object in their mind of what they want to document, because to them, they've offloaded that to the video. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna video everything. It will capture everything because it's real time. It's continuously recording, right? So that's, to me, I prefer photographs in the sense that, yeah, I know exactly what I want to photograph. I'm gonna snap the thing, right? The video is informative when you want to understand the sequence of events, right? This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. But if you're investigating, you're just swinging like this, then yeah, to me, it doesn't really give you additional benefit. I'd rather take photographs, okay? But if it's like, if you're actually witnessing the accident happen, then yeah, video is great. Right? You're watching it, right? Frame by frame, in real time. Right? So ensure that all pertinent parts of the incident scene are photographed. So this assumes you know what are the relevant parts. You know what objects are relevant to that accident, right? And also in real time, because you're taking the photographs in real time. Ensure that all photos are logged at the time and note the conditions, state of equipment, on, off, locked out, etc., materials, tools. So things that might be changed later on, right? So you got to document all that stuff. And identify any items for potential sample collection, testing, or analysis. So this assumes you know what is relevant. And determine if, how, and when this evidence can be collected. Okay? And photo narrative guidelines, let me do it, and we'll go on break. Start by taking perspective, distance shots that establish the location of the incident in relation to identifiable landmarks. Again, this is all context, right? This stuff. It's just objects being placed in space and time relative to other objects. Right? Follow with traveling photos that lead to the incident scene. Once at the incident scene, take perspective, distance shots, then medium, and finally close-up of key features. Sure. Often it is useful to include measurement tools. So someone brought this up. Okay, fine. And photo markers. In photos, when doing so, first take the shot without the added item to prevent claims of tampering or altering the evidence. Then add the item without altering any of the salient features of the scene, right? But here, if you really are trying to depict the size of something, sure, use it for depiction purposes. But when you actually want to make a measurement, make the measurement accordingly and record that. This is the actual measurement. I'm only displaying, like, don't read my ruler, the measurement from the photograph. I already did this measurement, okay? I'm just showing you the ruler that I used beside the item, okay? Photos provided in reports should be numbered and labeled with a descriptive caption, photo 14, view of damaged lift truck looking south, right? So literally, you're placing objects in space and time. Direction. What is it beside? Well, the table that the guy was sharpening the knife or holding his knife was beside the, tilt fryers, etc., right? Photo of the table beside this tilt fryer. Photo of this kitchen where this distraction is occurring, or boredom. Okay? Oh yeah, he's alone here. There's no sound. He's just sharpening. He's just daydreaming, and that's why he sliced his knuckle. Right? So subject for photos, right? Rescue in progress. I mean, this is assuming you can get there in time, right? And all this stuff. Sure. Okay. Right, fine. Right? This is here. I mean, I don't know if you are able to take aerial views. If you can, sure, right? Or if it's relevant, right? So at least you can put this down. I mean, we have fancy phones. I think everyone here has fancy phones that you can literally get a compass app to get an estimate what the direction that you're facing when you're looking at an object. Okay, damage surfaces. So okay, I think I'll let's break there. So now it's 11. So let's go 11:10, and then I'll continue on with more photos. Okay? 11:10. If you have any questions, just ask away. Here, let me actually review the chat. Okay. Let's see. Okay, here. Need to think about all aspects. Okay, no. Open the PowerPoint. Go to slide 2 and follow the lesson plan. Am I correct in saying that the word shall means that is? Okay, so Corporal Doyle. Yep. Shall means there's no choice. You shall do that, right? To the dashboard. Wet floor maybe. Oh, sure, yeah. Shall, must, you have to do that. But just because they say shall on a piece of paper, it doesn't mean people will actually do that in the real world. I shall ensure that all these healthcare workers are given N95 masks. But too late. All our masks are in China. You gotta wear surgical masks. All right, if there's no question, I'm going to the bathroom, get more coffee. Okay, let's see. Next one is a question about rights. Okay, let's do this. Okay, let me start again. So I reviewed the chat, and someone was a little bit on the fence about what the word shall mean and whether or not this is a right, right? They're basically both correct, right? Shall means, so again, I'm speaking from the world on paper, right? This utopian paper roll. Okay, shall means there is no option. You must do this. So whenever they say the word shall, that's how you get your rights as a health and safety committee, as a worker, right? For example, okay, let's look at the duties of the employer. Okay, there's the word shall there, and all this stuff is underneath the shall. So it says in the roll on paper, right? Shall ensure that all permanent and temporary buildings and structures meet the prescribed standards, right? So indirectly, it's looking for the employer to protect the health and safety of the worker, which is basically this thing. Every employer shall ensure, shall, no choice, that the health and safety at work of every person employed by the employer, meaning employee, is protected. Okay? So here, something more direct, right? So this is indirect, right? Okay? Here, D, shall make readily available to employees in printed and electronic form, 1, a copy of this part and a copy of the regs made under this part that apply to the workplace. So for example, right, now we're entering this in this realm of the paperless, right? But technically, okay, printed, it says it right there. So if you're a worker, you go to your employer, okay, and the employer is providing for you all this stuff in electronic form on a computer, and you say, no, I'm working with confined spaces. I want you to provide me with a printed form of the confined space regulation, right? Then they have to do it, right? That's your right to know about that regulation, okay? Or for example, if I want you to print a statement of your general policy concerning health and safety. They have to print it for you and provide or make it available to you, that printed form. Now, they can make it available to you by just putting it, so it doesn't mean that they have to print, let's say there's 100 of you, 1 copy each. They can easily meet this requirement by printing one out, putting on a safety board. There you go. It's in printed form. It's readily available to you because you can go to this board, take it off the board, read it, put it back, please, right? So that's the idea, right? So same thing with the, I think, shall participate, right? Here, shall provide prescribed first aid facilities and health services, okay? And the workers say, well, I don't have these first aid facilities. And here it says shall, yeah, I have a right to these facilities because this goes along the line of you protecting my health and safety, right? Provide prescribed sanitary and personal facilities, okay? Right? So whenever you have this thing, when you have a responsibility as a duty and as a shall, that you have to provide services to someone, yeah, that automatically becomes, I mean, we can use the word right. I like to prefer to call that entitlement, right? So I have an entitlement because to me, I reserve certain things as rights, right? So this is the difference between the American conception of rights and the French conception of rights. The Americans, whenever they say that they have a right to something, they are negative rights. Does anyone know what I mean by that? What does negative rights mean? So for example, if I'm claiming I have a right to education, right, to be educated when I'm growing up as a child in Canada, is that a negative right or is that a positive right?
Positive.
Positive.
Why is it positive? So someone has to provide
Something is actually happening where I think a negative.
That's right. So for example, the right to free speech, that is a negative
Providing
right.
a benefit.
Yeah, providing a benefit, right? So that means I'm forcing someone, right, their labor to provide me with this education, right? Same thing here, right? So these are all, in the world of, if you want to call these rights, these are positive rights, right? Because now you're making the employer provide first aid facilities, provide sanitary facilities, provide guard railing, provide provide this, right? So these are entitlements. To me, I call these entitlements, not rights, because I have a special place in my mind when I call something a right. To me, the only true proper rights are negative rights. Okay, that I'm not forcing someone to do something for me, right? To give me their labor because someone else is telling me they have to provide me with this thing. Okay, but yeah, so I call this entitlements. So anytime you see the word shall, then yeah, then the employer shall do this. Shall do this for the worker, shall do this for the workplace health and safety committee. They shall participate. Right? You have to allow the members of the health and safety committee to participate in all this stuff. Right? So a slight technical thing, you might want to call it a right, but to me, I'm very careful when I choose certain words because it makes me understand things in certain ways. Right? So to me, I call these entitlements. Okay? You might call it rights. Right? Right to know, right to participate, right to refuse dangerous work. Right? All right, so that's that. All right, going back to the subject matter at hand. Okay, so subject for photos. Close up for key features. Take from various angles as necessary to fully characterize the feature or object. Documents, sure. Site signage, logbooks. Yeah, these are just objects that you can possibly take pictures of, right? So I'm not gonna spend too much time on this. Okay. Okay. Exemplars. The concept of an exemplar is that if you have something broken, okay, never put it together and take a picture of what it's supposed to look like. Right? If you can help it, find an unbroken part, take a picture of that, and then show people, oh yeah, this is what it's supposed to look like when it's functioning properly, etc., etc., etc. Right? But sometimes you might not have another set to show. Then yeah, you might rely on stock photographs or sketches and things like that, or explaining by words on what this thing is supposed to look like when it's put back together. Or maybe after you've analyzed and done whatever you need to do to the evidence, then yeah, put it together and show people what it's supposed to look like after, before it was broken. Okay, here, okay? Now, all right, so going to the, you're supposed to complete a photo log of what you see here. Now, okay, so usually we do this as a group, right? But or I break you out in syndicates. But we're going to do this together. And the main point I'm going to try to make here, I'm going to try and show you or make you understand or aware of what intellectual honesty is, right? Of what it actually means to be objective, right? And there's a point what I'm trying to, and there's a reason why I'm doing it this way. So for example, okay, here, what is that?
A leaking hot water tank.
There you go. Right, perfect. Leaking. Let's analyze that, right? So again, don't take offense when I'm criticizing something. I'm just doing it for to kind of get at the point, right? Leaking hot water tank. So if I were to ask you, just by looking at that picture, how do you know? Without yet bringing any baggage or your life experiences, what you've seen before in life, just by being objective and looking at that exact picture, how do you know that's a leaking hot water tank?
Water coming from the tank at the bottom. And then
Okay, let me break that down.
Some corrosion in some of the material.
Sure. Okay, so what's telling you that it's water, right, is the corrosion, right? Okay. So how do we even know that's water? Is it because did you reason that from the look of this tank, that you've seen tanks like this before, and this is a water tank?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So that's what you've reasoned. Perfectly fine, right? I don't know, but you know. So that's why you used leaking hot water tank, right? So that's what you're going to choose to put in that box in your D&D Form 63. But for here, right? Just objectively, how do we know what tells us that the supposed hot water? First of all, how do we know it's hot? Just from looking at the picture. What tells you that it's hot?
It did say the water was hot. I said that hot water tank. I don't know if the water is hot or not.
Perfect. See that? I got the object wrong already. See that? Perfect. Okay, I got the object wrong already. So it's a property of the tank. Okay, it's a hot water tank. It's water. We don't know whether or not it's hot or not. Okay, fine. How do we know it's actually leaking from the tank?
I don't think you do. I don't think you know it's water. I don't think you know that's a hot water tank. That could be coming from behind that tank looking thing. You're drawing conclusions based on the tools that are there and what little bit you see, so you don't really know anything about it.
Yeah, so this is my main point, right? So of course, I accept whoever said leaking hot water tank. Yeah, fine. If you want to describe the thing that way, all I'm trying to point out to you guys, because you might know something about this picture or the things in the picture, what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that when you're looking at somewhere, to be truly objective, you ask yourself, how do I know that? Me, I don't know that, right? It's not a video. I don't see water. Even if I were to see water moving in this direction, right? I can say, oh yeah, that's the water tank. Or maybe it might be something behind this supposed water tank. Or it might be coming from here, right? Or someone brought an object, it leaked, and somehow that thing is just beneath this thing, it's here, da. So this is what I mean by being objective about what you're seeing, what you're reporting, what words you're using in your D&D Form 63, because, right, when you start putting words down, you will anchor people's minds in the words that you use. And when you anchor people's minds in certain names or objects in the thing, that thing is going to get transmitted down the road, okay? People are going to repeat that as if it was true, that we actually truly know that this is a hot water tank, it's leaking water exactly from the actual tank, right? So that's why I want you to be careful. I know, right? Nobody does this in this way because it's time consuming. Like nobody writes in a, for example, open up any D&D Form 663. Like I know you have a stack of it somewhere in your drawers, right? Just take a couple of hours before lunch or whatever, if you have spare time at work, rifle through them and read the description in box number 4. You'll see, right? People don't put there, they always report what they think they know or what they know, right? There's no negative information there. Oh, I don't exactly know that. I don't know that. I don't know that, right? And this is the problem, is that people are filling in gaps sometimes when information is missing, right? So that's all the main point I'm trying to make, is that, so for me, whenever I produce a report, okay, I either put an asterisk, I would put a vague word like stuff, object, round object, metallic object, red object, right? So to me, it's an internal placeholder that, oh, Alejandro doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about because he went there quickly, he looked at something, okay, and then I just say object. So when I review that, oh yeah, I'm telling the client certain things, I actually don't know what that thing is, right? So I'd rather have a placeholder there. So I tell the client, yeah, we're missing information here. We probably should figure that out before moving forward with any sort of conclusion. And we're going to base our actions on this object, okay? So that's all I want to do, to let you make sure that you enforce objectivity in your mind of what you know and what you don't know, and how do you know that, right? Okay, so to me, I would call that, just by looking at the picture, liquid on ground. Yeah, liquid beside tank, liquid underneath white tank, right? Well, what's the white tank, Alejandro? It's a hot water tank. I know it because there's a label on it that says hot water tank. I know it because of the invoice. Yeah, we bought the hot water tank. I know it because someone told me that's a hot water tank, right? So how do you know? Like if someone told you, oh yeah, I know that's a hot water tank because that guy over there told me it's a hot water tank. That's how I know. Okay, then that might not be the most reliable evidence, okay, because you know that based on this report, because someone told you that's what it is, okay? I'd rather have, oh, what's the actual water tank? Can we take a look at it now and confirm? Yep, hot water tank. Let's dip our hand in there. Yep, tastes like water. Doesn't taste like anything. Okay, hot water tank, okay? Right, it's here. Right? So people who don't know tools, right? So they might call this a certain tool, or maybe some people might call that a pipe wrench or whatever, okay? So some people might call that some sort of tape, okay, adhesive, right? Some sort of a cylindrical orange rod, okay? So again, whenever you're looking at something, object, okay? And then I ask myself, okay, do I know something about that? How do I know that? Okay, I'll call that now a water tank. Oh, wait a minute, Alejandro, that's a hot water tank. How do I know something about that? Let me look again. I touch it, it's hot. Okay, hot water tank. Okay, how do I know it's coming from this? How do I know that's water? Okay, can we find that out? Who who said that was water? How do they know? All right, we checked it. Yep, it's water. Someone said it was leaking from the tank. How do we know? Show me physically what part of the tank this thing is supposedly coming out of. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, that's where it's coming out. I got it. Okay, check, right? Evidence concrete. We can solidify this now in the description. Okay, okay, that's the idea. Same thing here, right? Okay. Right. So yeah, some people might call that water, liquid. For me, whenever I'm describing something, I describe it using the vaguest word first, right? And then I make it more specific. So it's like an iteration. What does the word iteration mean? Does anyone know what the word iteration mean? Iteration. You can Google that, right? Rounds, right? Next, right? We're basically filtering out things that we know, things that we don't know, things that we know we don't know, right? So we're moving always to things that we know and we really know, right? And we're figuring out what are the unknown unknowns, what are the known unknowns, and what we think we know, but we actually don't know, right? Iteration over and over and over again, okay? And of course, people have blind spots. I have a lot of blind spots, okay? That's why you have a health and safety committee who should have people there, different backgrounds, different walks of life, different experiences, different technical training, knowledge, different ages, right? Because from age comes experience, right? So that people can cover other people's blind spots when they discuss problems in the workplace. Okay? So that's the idea there, here, right? Here, to me, that's floor surface type 1, floor surface type 2, floor surface type 3. I'm saying type 1, 2, and 3 because to me, that looks different than that, which looks different than that, right? So there might be something, a property of that surface that's not the same of this surface, that's not the same as this surface. So if we were to pretend that this person actually slipped, right? So which surface was her feet on when she slipped? Is it here or is it here, right? And how did this liquid get there? Is it from that tank, supposedly, they went out? Or is it a leak from the ceiling? Or was someone carrying some sort of bucket of water? It spilled right there on the spot. How did it happen? How did it get there, right? Because the way that object got there will determine what our corrective actions is going forward, right? Here, right here. They're showing another fictitious scenario. Oh, it happened to come from this now. Okay, so we're gonna call that object, I'll call it pipe, cylindrical pipe, maybe because of the color. I'll say it's copper, sure, okay. I'm basing that on the color only. Okay, I'll call that water, right? Here we saw damage. How can damage happen? How can this thing happen? I mean, it can happen in many different ways, right? What's one way that can happen? That the supposed water is coming out. It could have burst.
Yeah,
right?
frozen
So
pipe.
if I'm saying it burst, then when things burst, this damage may look a certain way, right? If I'm saying no, that thing got hit by something, and that's why it did that, then yeah. So now, if that's our thinking, will it get damaged in that way, right? How do we know that? Where's the offending object that supposedly hit that thing? Who is doing what? What are big objects in our workplace right now with enough force that can damage that thing, right? So now you have two options, right? In that scenario, pipe bursting or something hitting it. Which one is it? Okay, all right, because that will let you now know what the cause is and what the proper solution is going forward, right? Things like that, yeah. So whenever you do a photo log, complete it, okay? And for me, I always have a test of intellectual honesty. Do I actually know that? If I don't, I put a placeholder, object whatever, object this, or put an asterisk. Yeah, I don't know what that thing is and what it does. Because I did not collect enough information. I didn't talk to the right person. I talked to that guy, and he too doesn't know what that thing is all about. Okay, so now I'm not gonna use the excuse. Well, that's what he told me. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna put in my report and transmit that down the line. No, I said yeah, that guy, I don't think he knows it either, right? So then I'm gonna put down, we both think it's this, okay? And we probably should check that, or someone that might know something about that, okay? All right, any questions on that? All right, if not, I'll keep on going for 15 more minutes, and then we'll take the lunch break, okay? Sketches, okay? The purpose of a sketch is to make a visual representation of the scene that identifies the locations and relationships of pieces of evidence and the surroundings, okay? So to me, so for example, let's read. Supplement photos and witness statements. So to me, that's how I use sketches. Sketches to me is just supplementation, right? If I were able to take a bird's eye view or a planned view of the scene or of the accident location, then yeah, I might not necessarily need a sketch anymore, right? I only need a sketch because when I'm taking photographs on the ground, even though sometimes I would try panoramic, right? But it distorts the image anyway, right? So forget that. It's basically large file size, right? It's just stitching the thing, okay? So the way I do it is that I take a photograph and then later on, I make a sketch, okay? And basically the sketch, to me, is just I'm putting the objects relative to other objects in the scene that I cannot quickly see just from reviewing my photographs because it's just one picture, one picture, one picture. So the sketch I'm putting where everything is related to everything else, right? So that's why I love buying your brown notebooks, right? So you guys in your Annex, you sell this brown notebook, and that brown notebook is fairly sturdy, right? It has graph paper in it, and basically at the back there's also a carbon copy, right? So I love buying that stuff whenever I visit the bases in the Canex because it helps me a lot because it's graph paper, right? So features to include victim incident locations, distances, topography, paths of object movements here, right? Fundamentally, this is what you're doing when you're putting in the event sequence, okay? Damage features, compass direction, sure. Okay, again, right? So I don't think anyone's going to be doing this or that unless you have some certain skills in CAD, or if something is necessary for you to actually do it this way because the part that got damaged is so small inside of an important piece of equipment that you need to figure out exactly what happened. Well, I can tell you right now, even if I'm the one investigating that thing, I do not have the skill set, right, to do that or that, right? You need specialized people now, engineers probably, to figure out how a specific component of something were to break, okay? So usually the sketches that I make in my own consulting work is that. That's all, right? Plan view. I only did this once when that drum fell, right? Elevation, we had to figure out at what point the thing snapped, okay? So basically, sketch making procedures, your guide tells you, ideally, work in a team of 2 to 3 people, 1 to draw and 2 to make measurements. Sure, right? If there's a serious accident, you have been dedicated all this time and resources to investigate, then yeah, you can have a team of 3. 1 person is drawing, 2 are making measurements. But chances are for any non-serious accident, minor, it's just you, okay? Use graph paper, right? Scaling and measurements, fine. Start by identifying an obvious landmark and what will be the boundaries of the scene. Use compass. It's always good to use compass directions, right? To identify the north direction, make a rough sketch showing the key features, and mark measurements of distance on the sketch, landmark the boundaries, objects in relation to boundaries, Use a measurement technique that ensures reasonably accurate measurement and positioning of the objects in the scene. Okay? Here are just kind of like recommendations, right? Use 2-headed arrows to denote distance lines. Again, this stuff, as long as you know. So the test for me, I'm going to make the sketch. I'm going to put all this information on it, plus a legend, plus shapes, plus measurements, plus all this stuff. And all that. So if I were to put my own sketch in my drawer and then pull it out again, maybe a month from now, and I look at it, and remember, I'm the one who made that sketch. If I can't even read my own sketch and understand what I sketch, then yeah, I have poor sketch making procedures, right? Or sketch making skills. So the test is, can you pull out your own sketch made many months ago and understand what it is that has been sketched and what happened there. And if you were to give that same sketch to someone else who does not know anything about what happened, and they are able to read your sketch and figure out what happened, then yeah, you have good sketch making skills. Okay? So here are just suggestions. So use two-headed arrows to denote distance lines. Well, there's no right or wrong, right? You figure it out what you want to do. Unless you belong to a certain industry that all this stuff is standardized, right? So every now and then, I have to read these kind of like engineering drawings, right? Because we do what's called HAZOP. So we have to look at these planned drawings, and they have basically conventions: what a pump is, what a motor is, what a valve is, and a certain type of valve, butterfly valve, and basically whatever other valve, gate valves, night valves, right? So there's a convention on the symbols, right? But if there's no convention, then yeah, it's up to you to figure out on how you want to denote distance lines or edges of stuff, and then put down in your legend and what it means, color coded, right? Up to you, right? Measurement accuracy and precision becomes increasingly important closer to the incident scene, of course. Right? And the field measurements need not be to scale. Okay, scale can be established in a recreated version too. Sketch making using a ruler or computer software, right? Yeah, as long as the measurements are accurate, doesn't have to be to scale unless you really want it to be to scale. Up to you. Okay, and there are basically two different ways. Okay, of placing objects. One is called the rectangular coordinates method. That's what I like to do. It does not matter that the scene is oval or triangular. I always convert it into rectangles, right? So basically, this is kind of like it's because I'm so used to reading like maps in the mall, right? Or like when you're playing Battleship. Oh, where do I need to go to the winners? Oh yeah, it's on G8. It's on this. So I'm used to looking at maps that way. That even my own sketches, that's how I do it. Okay. Rectangular coordinates method. But some people, the way they view the world, right, they're going to establish their own baseline. So I'm going to draw everything relative to that. Okay, so that's what they do. Fine. If that's how your mind works, so be it. If your mind works completely differently than these two things, then so be it. Use it. Right? If that works for you, then use whatever works for you. Okay, when you're drawing stuff or sketching stuff. Right? So use common shapes to represent objects, use heavier lines to denote borders and exterior building walls, and lighter lines for other features, sure. Or just call it building. Okay. Label objects and features of the sketch with letters, label items of evidence with numbers. Again, it's completely up to you what symbols you want to use. Okay. Include a letter and number key, that's called a legend, and orient the drawing with north at the top and mark with the, so again, this is all convention, right? So maybe if you're Australian, that you draw it upside down. Fine, he's Australian. That's why it's upside down. All right, great. Okay. So drawing techniques and conventions. So provide title block at the bottom with the following, right? Sketch title, address, type of occurrence, the date, who drew it, and the scale, right? So these are all information that tells the uninitiated on what the sketch is all about, right? And even if you can't read your own sketch, then you know you have a problem, right? So any questions on that? All right, let me do another 10 minutes and we'll break for lunch. All right, so critiquing of the sketches, right? Here, I'm not doing anything unfair because these are stock images from the internet, okay? Right, so here, let's critique it, okay? So first, do we know who sketched it? Yes or no? We do, right? JC, it's Jesus, right? JC sketched it, okay? So now, if everyone knows the initials like JC, someone knows who this person is in the workplace, fine, that'll be fine. But if someone doesn't know, it's probably a good idea to at least put the full last name, right? First initial, last name, or the entire name altogether, right? Now, at least here they demarcate north, right? Here, the date, right? So the date can be very vague, right? What's wrong with this date? This person assumes they have the same dating convention as other people, right? So what's wrong with that date? So we know it can only happen in 2016, right? It's only 12 months in a year, okay? But we don't know. Oh, actually, then we don't know. Is it April or is it going to be February 4? Or it could be April 16, 2002 or February 16, 2004, right? Okay, so for me, I've adopted your dating convention. So I write all my dates now as this, right? 24 November 21. That's how I do it now, right? I like it that way. Okay, so be clear when that happened. Fine. Here, what's wrong with these numbers? What's wrong with the numbers?
No unit.
There are no units, right? So we don't know what that's in meters, yards. They're more or less the same. Inches, light years, who knows? Micrometers, right? So you gotta put units down, right? Do we know where this happened? Well, in this case, it says Samuel's building, right? So of course, this person assumed, right? Taken for granted that people know where Samuel's building is, right? Maybe the people that has to read this sketch is internal to the workplace. Yeah, we know where Samuel's building is. Here, this B406, I'm assuming that's the room number or the building number, maybe. Okay, fine. Okay, here, they plop down B406, Samuel's building. So I'm presuming that's the building. Okay, here, they actually labeled road. Okay, gate 11. I don't know what this thing is, right? So I know you guys in the military are a big fan of acronyms, but please try to spell out what the acronym is so people know what exactly this thing is, this AGSM, right? I don't know if that's a building or a location or a parking lot or something else, right? Here they say pit, right? And then 2 rectangles. Well, I don't know what the actual pit is, right? Maybe this is the pit. Is this like a fencing around the pit? I don't know what that thing is. You got to label what this other square or rectangle is around this thing, right? Pit. Here, these arrows are pointing to wherever this thing is. Okay? They don't label what that is. I mean, I don't even know if this is some sort of car accident, right? Here, they're saying light pole. And to me, why is the light pole so far away from the road, right? Usually, light poles are on the road. So I can only presume, did a car hit this thing and the light pole suddenly ended up here? Is that what's going on, right? Okay, so you gotta be clear on your sketch. Okay, 0.078, 0.11. Like that is a very fine measurement, right? 0.11. I don't know what like 0.11 from 6.9. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Okay, I have no idea what that is. Okay, here, right? So this one is pretty more or less properly done, right? It tells you it's not the scale. It shows the north. It's got a title. We know who drew it. Sketched by SSG Sean L. Kelly, and it's even verified by someone else. Okay, we know the date. Okay, here I'll presume that's 11/17, December 24/8 maybe 2008. Sure. The location, Fort McClellan, AL, maybe that's Alabama, who knows? Okay. Scene portrayed, so basically they give you the building, room number. Okay, we know what it's all about. It's a death investigation, right? We don't know if it's homicide or suicide. Okay. Here they have a legend. Okay. Pistol, bottle, letters, shell casing, red stain, fibers. Here, great. Okay. They call it red stain. Okay, I mean you might call it blood. This people called it red stain. Sure, fibers, gunshot wound, cigarette. Okay, right. And here they put actual units. Okay, in their numbers. Sure, great. They have a window, dresser, right? Enter, exit, door. All right, person here probably bed. Okay, things like that. Right? Good. This one, right? More or less the same. Okay. Fairly well done. In this case, not drawn to scale. We know the direction of north. We know who drew it. We know who approved it. We know the location. Okay, and basically we have units. Okay, we have a legend. Well, here they create a legend for the crowbar, but the other objects in the space have been labeled where they are. Right, cabinet, couch, desk, bookcase, locker. Right, but do we actually know what happened? House breaking. Okay, here, house breaking. So that's kind of like what happened here. Sure. Okay. So again, figure out what you're weak on when you're making a sketch by reviewing it yourself when some time has passed, or get someone else to look at your sketch if they can figure out what it's all about, then yeah, you will have good sketch making skills. Lastly, let me see. Maybe I'll stop there. All right. So I'll stop there. Let's go on break. Again, I don't eat lunch. You'll see my face here. So if you have any questions, let me know. Talk on the mic. I'll answer it. And for the rest, I'll see you at 1300 Atlantic time.